Good morning. All right, we'll try it one more time. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Beyond the Color Lines, from science fiction to science fact. This program has been curated to commemorate Black Space Week 2024. I am Dr. Quincy Brown, the Director of Space STEM and Workforce Policy at the National Space Council. Thank you. So the National Space Council is comprised of 19 space-related departments and agencies from across the federal government. The National Space Council is also chaired by the Vice President, Kamala Harris. And under her leadership, the Space Council is stewarding the responsible and sustainable use of space to protect our national security interests, using Earth observation data to address the climate crisis, fostering a thriving commercial space sector, and diversifying and growing the education and career pathways to the space workforce. The Vice President has recently launched a call to action to bring the benefits of space to communities across America to ensure that our nation's future in space remains strong. And for us to continue our leadership, we must have people from all backgrounds contributing to the space enterprise. So we are gathered here to honor and celebrate those who have overcome obstacles, big and small, those who have persevered despite the very real challenges that we continue to face while we live, learn, and work, and those who are up and coming, continuing to push the boundaries and chart new paths. You are in for a treat. We have an amazing lineup of speakers who will highlight the legacy, contributions, and future of Black people at the intersection of art, business, humanities, science, entertainment, and space. Today is going to be like a family reunion. You will see and hear from familiar faces, and hopefully learn about and meet some who you hadn't known before. So next, I'd like to introduce today's co-MC, Kelvin Coleman. He is the Associate Administrator of the Office of Commercial Space Transportation at the Federal Aviation Administration.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I want to thank, first of all, the National Space Council. I want to thank Dr. Quincy Brown for extending an opportunity or invitation to me to co-host today's program, which is so important. It's wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful to take part in such a history lesson that we're going to get about the Black experience in space. Black Space Week. This is a great way to kick off Black Space Week, and we're looking forward to today's program. And we're going to really be in for a treat today. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about what I get to do each and every day as a part of this great community, which is lead the Office of Commercial Space Transportation at the Federal Aviation Administration. Our job responsibility is to ensure safe commercial space launch activities. So we have the pleasure of working with companies like Blue Origin, SpaceX, United Launch Alliance, Rocket Lab, to enable those operations to occur from various places around the country. I'm proud to say we're approaching 800 successful launches without anyone in the public ever getting hurt. And we are seeing an increasing number of human spaceflight missions. So if you have aspirations to fly into space, those dreams can be realized now. So we're at such a great time in the space community. So I want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here. I want to thank the Space Council for the opportunity to co-host, and we have a great program on hand, so please sit back and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelvin. So I said today's going to be like a family reunion, so Kelvin and I are going to be cousins today. So you'll hear from both of us throughout the program. And next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Kevin Strait. He is the Curator of History here at the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Strait, and I'm a curator in our history division and the curator of our temporary exhibition, Afrofuturism, A History of Black Futures, currently on display in our Bank of America Changing Gallery. It's my honor to welcome you to the National Museum of African American History and Culture. As the goal of the Afrofuturism exhibit investigates the long history of engagement of Black Americans with Afrofuturist principles of liberty, innovation, and fulfillment, the museum is very pleased to be the site of today's symposium that is part of a series of activities designed to amplify our community's experiences in the history of space exploration. Indeed, space travel is a central theme that's explored in our exhibit, chronicling the successes of Black astronauts and those connected to the field, as we proudly display artifacts such as the flight suit worn by Charles F. Bolden that's currently on view in our displays. We encourage all of you to explore these stories on display in our museum, and once again, it's our pleasure to welcome and honor our guests today. And thank you once again for being with us this afternoon for this wonderful opportunity to join this amazing group in discussion today. Thank you.
And so I want to just acknowledge and express our appreciation to Kelvin and the museum staff for bringing today's program to life and helping us do all the things that we needed to make sure today was successful. I'd mentioned that the Space Council has 19 members, and next you'll hear from 2 of them, representatives from the Department of Commerce and the United States Space Force. Please welcome the Deputy Secretary of Commerce, Don Graves, who will be followed by Lieutenant General David Miller, Commander of Space Operations Command.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Brown, for that introduction. It is really great to be here with you all today to celebrate Black Space Week. First, let me thank Shrak Parikh, who is and Dr. Brown of the Space Council, for inviting me to join you today, and also, of course, the National Museum of African American History and Culture for hosting us in this unbelievable venue, and of course, all of the attendees today for your participation as well. It is an absolute privilege and delight to share the stage with leaders who are actually driving forward our progress in the space enterprise. People like Jordan Smith, Delia Sly, Kiana Wilson, our next generation of leaders who are navigating our country and our community forward. As is true for most, if not all of us today, I am a self-proclaimed space nerd. I admit it right up front. When I first entered college, I actually thought that I was going to study astrophysics. That was my plan, studying with renowned Professor Jay Pasikoff. Unfortunately, things didn't play out that way. I got lured away by the dark side of political science and history, and everything has gone horribly wrong in some respects, but it has gone pretty well in other respects. Even so, space holds an enduring place in my mind, because when I think of space, I think of a word that the President talks about a lot: possibilities. The possibility to explore and to make stunning discoveries about the universe and, more importantly, our place in it. To drive technological innovation and advancements which help improve our lives here on Earth, as well as our ability to further explore space. To exercise the better angels of our nature: curiosity, collaboration, and partnership. And the possibility of paving new frontiers for American commerce, American business, American entrepreneurs of all types, American ingenuity. Predicted to be more than $1 trillion industry within the next decade, the space industry is growing rapidly in size and in influence, creating new economic opportunities for our country and for our country's success. But as we know all too well, the space enterprise has not always been equitable. Amongst all of the things that we do at Commerce, and we do a lot, from the Census Bureau to the Minority Business Development Agency, international trade, one of my favorite areas of interest is one that's not as well known. That's at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in their Office of Space Commerce. Yes, we do have an office in NOAA that is focused on space. There we go. The Office of Space Commerce plays a critically important role in ensuring that entrepreneurs and workers from every community have the chance to engage in this exciting work. In January of 2024, I was proud to direct the establishment of an equity subcommittee of something that we created at the Department of Commerce at the beginning of this administration, the Commerce Space Coordinating Committee, or as we call it, CSIC. It's at NOAA, so you'll forgive the acronym there. That committee is focused on the efforts and initiatives that we're building towards a more equitable, representative workforce in the commercial space sector. And as the Office of Space Commerce continues to lead the way on a range of groundbreaking commercial space initiatives, like our Traffic Coordination System for Space, or TRACS, which is providing the basic space situational awareness data and service that civil and private space operators are going to need to operate successfully and safely in space, we're committed to making sure that there are real, tangible opportunities for Black Americans to engage in ways that we haven't had before. We're working to solidify the United States as the flag of choice when it comes to commercial space endeavors, and we want space commerce to be the industry of choice for the burgeoning pool of talented individuals that we see in communities of color all across this country. For too long, communities of color have been left out of this nation's success story, including our legacy of space, advancing space innovation. We've made huge strides by this quiet, silent, sometimes hidden generation and generations. Our country's made these strides as we stand on the shoulders of absolute giants, people like Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and the rest of NASA's hidden figures, or our first Black astronauts and astronaut candidates like Ed Dwight, Mae Jemison, Guy Bluford, Ron McNair, Fred Gregory, all of whom I admired long before I came to the Commerce Department. In fact, when I was growing up as a teenager, instead of having sports posters or cars, as a lot of people did, or maybe celebrities, I had Ed, I had Ron McNair, I had Fred, and I had Guy Bluford, our first Black astronaut, up on my wall. Charlie Bolden is another great, who our very first Black NASA administrator, who was my colleague in the Obama-Biden administration. There are so many more of these hidden figures who broke racial and gender barriers in government and industry alike to fight for a seat at the table of our space enterprise. And I'm proud to be here with you all today celebrating all of them. Still, there is so much more for us to do. And the Department of Commerce, we embrace this administration's priority to create economic opportunity for all Americans, all of our communities, all of our people. We're proud to partner with nonprofit organizations like the Brooke Owens Fellowship and the Patty Grace Smith Fellowship, which focus on cultivating future cohorts of female, gender minority, and racial minority leaders in the aerospace sector. We'll be hosting their fellowship summits later this year at the Department of Commerce. We're also supporting the AIAA's Diverse Dozen cohort, a group of rising stars from non-traditional communities who are focused on tackling major challenges of space sustainability. The department is also collaborating closely with our colleagues at the White House's National Space Council and our partner agencies all across the federal government in our work on space STEM and workforce development policy. In this Black Space Week, as we look forward to Juneteenth, the Commerce Department stands with all of our Black pioneers who brought us closer together, closer to the equitable space ecosystem that we deserve, both here on Earth and up in space. But one thing is absolutely clear. The contributions, the leadership, the achievements of Black Americans, both past, present, and future, in civil, national security, academic, or commercial, isn't science fiction. It's a science fact, and it will help us guide this country into a very successful future. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day, a great time here learning about all of the things that we're doing, hearing from some amazing speakers, but let's keep it going into the future. Let's have the Black community be an equitable part of America's space future. Thank you so much, and take care.
All right, good morning. So that was kind of weak. Military's here now. We got to pump it up just a bit. Ready? Good morning. Good morning. There we go. All right. I'm Lieutenant General David Miller. I'm the commander of Space Operations Command, and let me say thank you to Dr. Brown. Thank you to the National Space Council for the opportunity to be a part of Black Space Week. If you spent time either here in this museum, which we'll do today, my lovely wife is sitting up here in front of me. Let me acknowledge her. But we can give her a round of applause too if you want to. I'm going to pay for that later. But if you spend time in this museum, if you spend time at the Smithsonian, or just walking around the mall, and you visited the monuments for the men and women who've served this nation, you will notice something, and that is that Black history in the United States military is American history. And the simple fact is, from Crispus Attucks in 1770, who was the first person, at least noted a color in this nation, to give that last full measure of devotion till today, throughout your military, you are seeing phenomenal performances. And I wanted to let you know that for the United States Space Force, which as we celebrate our 5th year this year, that is no different. I am the commander of 12,000 Guardians and Airmen who make up Space Operations Command. I get to see them every day. I'm actually going to see some of them tomorrow morning. They are representing you proud no matter their background. We ask 2 things and 2 things alone. The first is that you raise your hand and you sign up for something bigger than yourself. And the second is that you bring it each and every day. I think you'll be very happy to know that not only do they represent you well, no matter their color or background, they represent this nation well. What I'd like to tell you, though, is where they came from is how we're going to get there. And these are Americans who, in my view, represent the best in each and every one of us. They have potential that has been untapped in many ways. They have exceeded expectations principally because of 3 reasons. Number one is they have a level of perseverance that I think is remarkable. They have a level of resilience to fight through, particularly when the odds are against them. That is remarkable. And I think their courage to perform is there. But they didn't get that from me or anybody who trained them in the first few years of their service. They got that because of pioneers whose shoulders they're standing on. Earlier, I heard the mention of the Hidden Figures, and they are remarkable. There's one who is a member of the Air and Space Hall of Fame, and her name is Dr. Gladys West. She is actually known as the mother of the global positioning system. If you use the blue dot on your phone to get here today, thank Dr. West. If you got money out of an ATM and you realize that the encryption and encoding scheme that allowed that to be a secure transaction came from the timing signal of the global positioning system, thank Dr. West. She came and gave and did what was needed in the 50s when all the odds were stacked against her. She was challenged early in math. She was the valedictorian both in her high school and in college, and joined what now is the Naval Surface Warfare Center in Dahlgren, Virginia in 1955. At first, she didn't take the job because she wasn't sure they were ready for her skills, I don't think. But when you think about pioneers like this, she actually solved manually the math problems that allow the global positioning system to work today. Her history and legacy in geodesy, in navigation, and in global positioning is phenomenal. And it is the shoulders of people like her that we derive our perseverance. But she's not alone. There are dozens who have been mentioned throughout some of this program today, and frankly, you're going to hear from some more. One I'd like to mention is a man who we hosted at Space Operations Command about a month ago, and that's former Captain Ed Dwight, the first astronaut candidate, frankly, designated by President Kennedy in 1961. Test pilot, fast jet pilot. Frankly, when they ran the cards in the machine to determine who was qualified to be an astronaut candidate, partially because of bias and, frankly, systemic barriers, his was the only card that rose to the top. And his level of resilience was remarkable. Went through one of our most rigorous programs in test pilot school, and at night went to the Arizona State University to get his aeronautical engineering degree. These are people who do what is needed. They don't do what is asked. And it was a privilege to host him. Then, after he got out of the military and separated, partly because of bias in the astronaut program at the time, he became a very successful sculptor. He has commissioned over 100 different museum or tributes across the nation. If you go to the Smithsonian, you'll see him. If you walk down the Pentagon Space Force hallway, like I did this morning, you'll see a picture of him. And that's because he's an honorary guardian of the United States Space Force. But it's not just the pioneers of the past who give me confidence. It's people like Captain Tasha Reed. She was a member of my former unit, the 2nd Space Warning Squadron at Buckley Space Force Base in Aurora, Colorado, in the days leading up to January 8th of 2020. And as we became aware of a potential response from Iran for the killing of Soleimani, and that we knew a strike was coming, it was her and her team that built the plan to do the surveillance, warning, and tracking of inbound ballistic missiles. And it is because of people like her, there were 0 killed in action on that day. These folks stand on the shoulders of giants, and people like Captain Reed are going to take it forward. They do the 2 things that we ask of them, which is raise your hand and sign up for something bigger than yourself, but they also have stepped forward and said, I'm going to bring it each and every day. That's why I'm so comfortable, and I hope you'll hear some of that in the discussion today. I would also like to note that it's not just these giants that we stand on. You're going to hear from a panel here shortly, and I've got to acknowledge them. Victor Glover, Jessica Watkins, Leland Melvin, Joan Higginbotham, Yvonne Cagle, and Charlie Bolden are going to talk to you here shortly. And you're going to see that the giants of the past are still here today. We owe them a debt of gratitude. I have never seen the United States military as globally engaged as I see us right now. But you should feel comfortable because we got our perseverance, we got our resilience, and we got the courage from the people I just mentioned. And I thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you today. And I really, really look forward to getting an opportunity to tour the museum with my wife. We tried to come earlier, but you can't get tickets to this joint. So it's really tough. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I hope you have a great Space Week, and I hope you remember that the men and women who are serving this nation, since and before this nation began, there has never been a conflict, either exterior or interior to our borders, where blacks have not served and served honorably. You should take pride in that. They're doing a lot, and they're less than 1% of this population serving on active duty at any given time. Thank you very much. I hope you have a good day.
So I want to thank Deputy Secretary Graves and Lieutenant General Miller for their outstanding comments and remarks this morning. So I have the privilege of introducing our first panel, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. We will hear perspectives from current and former NASA astronauts on the past, present, and future of space. Joining me will be panel members, NASA astronaut and U.S. Navy Captain Victor Glover, NASA astronaut Dr. Jessica Watkins, retired NASA astronaut Joan Higginbotham, NASA astronaut Dr. Yvonne Cagle, and our panel moderator, retired NASA astronaut Leland Melvin. That's Leland Melvin.
Very
Thank
well
you.
done, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Kelvin. How's everyone doing today? Oh, come on, you can do better than that. How's everyone doing today? Good. It's Black Space Week. Come on. Woo! And there are a few people in the audience that I want to recognize. We have Hidden Figures. You're going to see some other Hidden Figures today, but Katherine Johnson, Hidden Figures. Many of you have seen the movie. Catherine's daughter and granddaughter are here in the front row. Could you please stand? Joylette and Lori. Again, standing on the shoulders of giants. Thank you. And is Cyan Proctor here today? Dr. Cyan Proctor, where are you? Cyan's in the back. She's the first African-American woman to pilot a commercial vehicle, the Crew Dragon, on her Inspiration 4 mission. So give her a round of applause. Cyan. All right, let's get to it. I'm so proud and happy to be here with my colleagues. And, you know, Jessica has this 100 on her shirt, on her jacket. And I've always wanted to be in space for more than, you know, like a few days. So she's been up there for over 100 days, and that's pretty impressive. But when you think about this week, space has long been an area of interest for people around the world, but not until the 1980s and the introduction of the space shuttle did women and blacks see a real opportunity to become full-fledged participants in this enterprise as astronauts. And today we want to spend some time talking about human spaceflight and space exploration, but also about why space is important to people here on Earth. How and why what we do is important to humanity and black people in particular. The first panel is going to focus specifically on human spaceflight by allowing real black astronauts to speak with their own perspectives on the grand venture of moving black communities from science fiction to science fact. And I think about Octavia Butler, who's an incredible scientific author she was a, what am I trying to say here, Victor?
Sci-fi.
She was a sci-fi author who said in the movie The Space Race, you have to write yourself into history. And so if you're not putting yourself into the history, we're doing ourselves a travesty, a disservice. So let's get into some questions. I'm not going to introduce them because they've already been introduced, and they are in the book, so read about those bios. Joni, you came to NASA as only the third black woman, and you have said you were moved by the intersection of space and humanity. That is sometimes referred to as the overview effect. Can you describe this for the audience, what the overview effect is and how you felt?
Absolutely. So let me just say, Yvonne, myself, and Stephanie Wilson were the second, I guess, black women selected to the Astronaut Corps in 1996. And I flew on STS-116 in December of 2006, right? It's been a while, I had to think about it. And it was really interesting because our crew was incredibly diverse. On the shuttle, it was the first time 2 African-American astronauts had ever flown together. Our commander was of Jewish and Korean descent. We had someone from the UK who had become an American citizen partly to realize his dream of becoming an astronaut. We had someone whose lineage was from India. We had the first Scandinavian astronaut of Norwegian and Swedish descent. And then on the space station, we had a Spanish-American astronaut, we had a German astronaut, and rounding out the crew was a Russian cosmonaut. So I always refer to our crew as the mini United Nations because we have a little bit of everybody on board. And it was really interesting. Our flight was pretty complicated, so NASA just manages to put like 30 days worth of a flight into 15 days, so you're always oversubscribed. But we, on the 8th day, had the morning free. And I remember being very intentional about flying over to the Russian segment and looking out the window. And at the time, it was the only window on the International Space Station. And I'm just taking in the beauty of the Earth. And as we were coming up over the Middle East, I just kind of thought about all the unrest and discord there. And then I literally turned back inside the space station, and this was my aha moment. I thought, if all of us, with all of our differences, you know, we spoke 5 languages, represented 4 countries and 3 space agencies, and if we could all get along while we were confined to this small little tin can of a spaceship, my thought was, why can't we all get along here on Earth where there's just so much more space? And it's interesting because when you're in the astronaut corps, every Monday we have these meetings where, you know, we come in and you talk about the office, and we have the guys that come back from space and they tell us all these things. It's mostly technical, but no one ever talked about this different perspective of humanity that they got called the overview effect. So it was interesting that I didn't know about it, but on my first flight, you know, I had that experience of my own. And it was just a realization that, you know, we are all a part of the same race, and that's the human race, and that we should all be working together collectively for the good of humanity.
That's beautiful. Did you feel more connected when you came home from space with people and that you didn't know, and how did that make you feel?
I did. I feel as though it's sometimes hard to love everybody. Everyone's not really likable sometimes.
Even your family, right?
But, especially family, you know. But I felt as though if we could all just learn to respect one another, you don't have to agree, but that level of respect that we all deserve because we are human beings, that's what I felt when I came back.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joni. As a veteran pilot and test pilot, Victor, you've had the opportunity to fly more than 40 different aircraft, as well as pilot the first operational mission on the SpaceX Crew Dragon. Can you tell us a little bit about the fundamental difference in how the Dragon was controlled from most aircraft you have flown? And one other question, second part, also explain to the audience if and how you will fly a vehicle with touchscreen controls.
Yeah, and thank you for that question. They're both linked. That's the biggest difference is I was used to having what we call inceptors, a stick and throttle. In the Joint Strike Fighter, sometimes the controls change and the throttle affects engine power, so we don't say stick and throttle, we use the term inceptors, but that's those kinds of things. And someone was joking, one of the SpaceX employees was like, yeah, we're gonna teach you to fly the iPhone. And it's kind of what it's like, a giant iPhone, actually 3 screens, you know? And so what it requires is learning something new. You know, I started training with SpaceX when I was 43, and so it really required me to be adaptable. And I would say if my teenage kids at the time, all were teenage, if my kids showed up, they would have been much more attuned, and it's much more like the devices they use. And so for me, though, it was a switch, thinking about this is high speed and you've got to make quick decisions. But then after training and learning what the system's capable of, what it's not capable of, what it's supposed to do, what the crew can do, and then when all those things need to come together, it actually is a really savvy system. Just like you find your devices now, as they improve software, you find like, oh, that feature I'm not so happy with, but this one is great, you know. That's how Dragon was, and we actually were able to give feedback to SpaceX to try and help improve it. By the time Waddy flew, Jessica, we call her Waddy, they had USB chargers for their tablets.
Yeah,
you know?
thanks for that.
What were the USB-C? USB-C?
Wait, we're working on it. It's a work in progress, you know. We're always getting better. But, and so, you know, I think the experience flying aircraft and in test pilot school, they don't just teach, I was a strike fighter pilot, pointy-nose, you know, like the Blue Angels, but I flew the Goodyear blimp and helicopters and Vietnam era. They wanted you to just understand aerospace vehicles because testing is really to do quality control of the manufacturing process. At the end of the day, that's what you're there for. And so they were trying to teach you more than just what you're familiar with, to teach you how to adapt to the system so that you can be a good evaluator of whatever systems. And I think that experience still was relevant for flying Dragon. And now I'm using that experience to do the same. Actually, the entire crew, 3 pilots and an engineer, Christina Cook, my crewmates for Artemis II, were doing the same thing for Orion.
So when he says Artemis II, this brother's going to the moon next year, okay? To the moon. And in 15 seconds or less, how did space make you feel? I want all of you to share what you felt like, what you brought back feeling this connection with space. 15 seconds or less.
No pressure.
10 seconds.
The planet The planet is fragile. Human life is fragile. But the planet is also robust, and human life is also robust. But both of them need us to take better care of them.
I would say that's a great answer. When I looked at the planet, I thought it was fragile, but the planet will spit us out and reconstitute itself and keep going if we don't take care of it, right? You came to NASA as an Air Force flight surgeon, served as Charlie Bolden's flight surgeon at one time, and before being selected as a NASA astronaut, you have subsequently served extensively as the Ames Research Center conducting biomedical research. Would you share with us some of the analogs for lunar and Mars geoscience sampling operations?
Wow, well, great question. I just returned from sailing on the oceans of Amsterdam, and there we studied a lot about geoscience, thermochemicals. Fascinating, and that's going to be so important as we go back to the moon and on to Mars. So those of you who are interested in geoscience or haven't discovered oceanography, it's very translatable. But on the last 2 days, they started talking about the way the planet speaks, the way the soil speaks, the way the ocean can let us know when its coasts are under strain, and how that can be really disruptive to our planet and our lives. And I was thinking, the very same signatures that they're looking at for geoscience and ocean are similar to the same signals and acidity patterns that I look at for the human body when our heart is under strain, when our muscles are under strain. And I began to realize that the earth is alive, it breathes. And I really want to use some of the discoveries I've made over my years as a medical doctor and overlay them on the face of the earth. And then take that perspective to look back from the lens of space to see if we can all come together, work together to regenerate, thrive, and sustain ourselves, both here on the planet and off.
Amen. Thank you. Lastly but not least, thank you. As one of only 3 degree geologists to become NASA astronauts, and the only one in the astronaut office today, would you let us in on some of your perspectives on effectively exploring the moon and Mars for their geological secrets that may have a long-term effect on our understanding and sustainability of our home planet? Jessica Watkins.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. And my answer is, how much time do you have? Because this is my favorite topic.
3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes. Got it. No, I'm just kidding. But it is something that is really something that is near and dear to my heart. As you mentioned, I'm a geologist and actually did most of my research, most of my work on planetary geology, focused mostly on the geology of Mars. And so it's been really interesting to me to come from that world where we can use orbital cameras and orbital instruments as well as rovers on the surface of Mars to gain scientific insight. And then to be now kind of on the other side of the curtain on the human spaceflight, the human exploration side of things. And I often get the question, robots or humans? What's the best way to explore out into our solar system? And my answer is always both. The way that we are approaching the lunar exploration even now is to send robots, send robotics, send rovers and landers to the surface, to the areas where we know we're going to be sending humans. Send the robots first to do some surveillance, some understanding, provide understanding of where our most important scientific questions are, provide some of that baseline foundation understanding, that then we can go and send the humans who are uniquely set up to do exploration in an efficient and a productive way that then allows us to bring that knowledge back to humanity. It brings the human part of human exploration back to all of us here on Earth. And all of what we are able to learn through that process about how the formation process of the moon and out into the solar system as well, that helps us understand our own place here on Earth in the solar system, our own formation history, and also what our future might look like. So I'm really excited about all of our Artemis work, starting with Victor and his crew, and continuing on through the rest of the Artemis campaign.
Right. The robots who we've been sending up historically, oh yeah, give her a big round of applause. Sorry about that. The robots we've been sending up in the past have not really been AI equipped. With AI, the new move in AI, you think the robots will be better sentinels for us to go forward? And is that something that's starting to take place now, if you've been following that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think, you know, AI is so powerful, and I think as what's really neat about it is being able to work in some of that human perspective into the robotics will only allow us to go even further as human beings in combination with that work. And so I think you know, AI is going to allow us to push those boundaries even further so that us as human beings and as humanity can push further as well.
Now, we don't want Skynet robots up there doing some things that we're thinking about coming up, and they're like, you know, standing in a campaign to keep us from making it to Mars. But
that's right. Some control will be
a
important.
little control, some controls in place. Okay. All right. Thank you. I think we have time for some Q&A. Do we have any questions in the audience? Can you turn the lights up in the audience, please, so we can see any hands that are raised? We have a question over here. We have a microphone coming. And you can address it to whatever other astronaut besides me you want to.
I mean, I can choose?
You can choose. You can choose.
All right. So my question is from the education perspective. I'm a teacher, and we're always trying to inspire kids about space. What do you think is the best pathway and advice to get young children involved in STEM and aerospace?
That's a great question.
I can start.
ahead,
I'm
Joni.
sure everyone has an opinion. So I would tell you the first thing is exposure. So I loved math and science, but I didn't know what to do with it until I joined a program called Inroads, which was a pre-engineering program for women and minorities back in the day. It's way something different now. And they exposed me to how I can take those two things and parlay it into a career in engineering. You know, and we did really very rudimentary things back then. We built a bridge of balsa wood and tried to see whose bridge could hold the most weight. You know, we did the egg drop. You drop it off a 2-story, you know, flight of stairs, and whoever designs the cradle, that'll make it not crack. But today, I mean, they have like little electronic boards for like 4-year-olds. And to me, if you can touch and feel and do with your own hands, that gives you such a sense of accomplishment. So to me, I say it's exposure and getting their hands on different things that they can do.
Access, opportunity, belief in themselves, and experiential learning are the ingredients to helping kids grow to become thinkers, endurers, and future explorers. Do we have time for another question, or we're done? One more question, and we have it right here.
Hi, thank you all so much for just being amazing and so motivational. My name is Nola Haynes, and I teach space security at Georgetown. So I have a lot of...
Thank you, by the way.
Thank you. I have a lot of excited and very nervous students because I teach it from the perspective of security and scary potential weapons in space. And one of the things that we talk a great deal about are other countries' space strategies and how other countries approach their space economy. In Canada, for example, where it's an all-hands-on deck sort of approach for the entire economy to be involved in the space project. So my question is, I'm getting there. What would you all suggest how to talk to students about the excitement and the inspiration of going to space for all the research reasons and collaboration, but then there's this real kind of problem regarding weapons in space and arms control and things like that. So if you have a group of kids that are interested in space from that perspective, you know, how do you talk to that group of students? Like, what does that kind of cohort of student look like? Because I feel like they're my students, but I have a very different perspective from you all. So I'm just curious, like, how do you talk to that student? Thank you.
Victor, I want you to hit that one.
Yeah, you know, you're bringing up something that is a little more nuanced, but I still go back to what Joan said. I think exposure is really important, and there's a historical record that you can refer to and see some of the things that were done that were not so nice, you know, and some of our adversaries or not our best friends, things that they have done that complicate, you know, our access to space. And so I think that exposure is still a great way to, because your question was very interesting. You talked about how to inspire that as well. And so I think the actual conflicts and, you know, anti-satellite things that are happening are just, hey, this is a reality. This is a fact. And so this is an aspect of space that we need to consider. You know, and that's not a major part of the discussion at NASA, except for mitigating those risks. But that's something that the DoD, specifically the Space Force, is looking to understand and to be ready to respond to. But I still think exposure, and I want to go back and reiterate, one, thank you for your service, you educators who inspire the future every day. And I want to just put one more plug in for exposure. You know, the space shuttle retired in 2011, and people thought NASA closed. That's how powerful exposure is. What do I mean? People couldn't go up and see or feel and smell a rocket launch, and they thought NASA closed. Now that we are launching almost every other day from Kennedy Space Center, you take your students out there to see a human launch, hits you right in the heart, a national security launch, you've got some context to go and further explain your lesson plan, and you hooked them, you've got the heart, and now their head's wide open, and you can fill their head with propulsion and security, and so that exposure piece is really a force multiplier. It's really powerful.
We have one quick, we're running a little bit out of time, but why don't you answer that question also as the man who's in charge of making those things happen?
I'm not in charge of anything. No, I think that's fair. You know, I go out and I do recruiting a fair amount as part of my responsibilities. I would say that I think exposure, sorry? Yes, we all do.
So you're coming to my class next semester?
Apparently, yes. I think exposure is on it. I think that's good. What I've typically seen and where I typically get the most transaction is, I think, being candid with people. The American people, the global population at large, just do not realize how much they're dependent on military space. And GPS is probably the best example that we often talk about of something that is so dominant across the globe, but frankly, something that's at risk when you look at the potential adversaries like China and Russia. So what we try to do is a couple things. First of all, we're talking about the opportunity, because every mom, dad, or person that I've talked to wants to understand you're going to take care of my baby. And they want to see them come out at the other end better equipped than when they went in. The second thing I think we do is talk about exposure, like Victor said, that they get to see it up front. So depending on the field they're interested in, some of them want to be rocket scientists. Yes, we still need those. And you take them to a launch pad, you take them down to Cape Canaveral, you take them out to Vandenberg, and you can see those things. Some of them they're just excited about math, and they want to realize an opportunity to maybe get into a degree program. I got an offer, I was telling Chirac just a moment ago, one of the Ivy League schools presidents reached out to me for opportunities in her program. So I think shorten it up to say that exposure is good, being honest with them and clear about, we need you. This is a we problem, this ain't a me problem. Space Force is small, the smallest military service by far, by necessity as it started. We're not gonna have every problem, but there's military space in every military branch. And it's not just military, I tell them. You can serve as a civilian. You can be Dr. West. And I think when they hear those stories and they see that, well, this is not only possible, but this is likely, if I pursue this path, a successful opportunity for me, whether it's 4 to 6 years at the outset, or if they want to keep it in for, I was 4 years and I was going to join the FBI, was my plan. How'd that work out? But it's also because I think they realize that they find something in the military that's bigger than themselves. They subordinate themselves to a team that is not about personal success. It's about us together. So I think all those things have been good, and I think there's a little bit of myth breaking. I'm from New York. My mom was a teacher for 35 years in the New York City public school system. There's still a fair amount of fear in the black community about serving in the military, even though
Okay.
The history has been incredible. So I'm getting the cue for the hook.
I've never told a 3-star like 10 seconds.
But you can tell I'm passionate about this, and I'll get your card, and I will come talk to you. I promise you, okay?
Thank you so much. No disrespect there. Okay, thank the panel here for a wonderful dialogue about what space means to them and what we're kind of doing and where we're going. Next, the sub-theme for this panel is standing on the shoulders of giants. And there is perhaps no greater giant than Ed Dwight. As a young Air Force captain and fighter pilot, he was selected at the direction of President John F. Kennedy in 1962 to join the prospective astronauts in training at the U.S. Air Force Aerospace Test Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base, with the intent to become the first black astronaut. Meeting with all types of resistance and bias, he eventually left the program after he was not selected by NASA following the assassination of President Kennedy. Just a month ago, on May 24th, 2024, he finally realized his dream of going to space when at the age of 90, he became the oldest person to go to space as a crew member on the Blue Origin New Shepard flight number 25. So soon after his flight, he had the honor of meeting the chair of the National Space Council, Vice President Kamala Harris. Roll the video.
I'm Ed Dwight, and I'm here celebrating Black Space Week with Vice President Kamala Harris.
Hello. I was so thrilled to watch you take that flight.
I don't know whether you knew that we had a special name for our club. We're called the Astronauts.
I love that.
Come. Retired U.S. Air Force captain, and now an official Astronaut, sculptor, Ed Dwight. You talk about standing on the shoulders of giants. This is one of the biggest giants I know. And when I retired from NASA in 2014, Ed came to my retirement party, and before he could say anything about me, he had to tell people why he was even there, because no one knew who he was. He was a hidden figure, just like Katherine Johnson. So Ed, it's been a great journey with you, with the space race, and you getting your justice. His call sign when he flew on Blue Origin was justice, because justice was served when he got to space. Please tell us what kept you going in those really tough times. You know, when I was watching you at the microphone and they asked you, are you going to fly in space? You're going to stay in the program after the president was assassinated. What was the thing inside of you that just really kept you moving forward, even though you had all this bias and oppression and things that didn't go the way that you had planned for them to go?
Well, can everybody hear me? Yeah. You know, it goes back to the reason that I was selected in the first place. You know, there was a visionary, black visionary by the name of Whitney Young, who went to Senator Kennedy before he was elected, and Kennedy needed a black vote, and so Whitney came up with this idea. He said, you know, what could he contribute to getting to get the black vote? And so Whitney suggested to the president, you know, we don't have any number of black scientists or engineers in America. So he came up with this idea that all the big colleges that produce engineers and scientists were not admitting even A-graded black students. So Whitney came up with this idea of using the 4 military academies because they can be appointed by Congress, and he would run around the country and get these black students and get them into the military academies. And by graduating from the military academies, these larger schools could not, turn them down for the master's degrees. So how do we do this? And Whitney came up with, make me a black astronaut and give him to me. And I will take this young man and take him around the country to inspire these young kids, to get into science and engineering. And so, how do you do that? How do you find a black astronaut? What the hell is that all about? As a result of this, the Pentagon had to do a survey to see if there was any blacks qualified. Kennedy called General LeMay and says, ask him how long would it take you to make me a black astronaut? And he said, I need 5 years at least to give you a qualified person that could even start training. They ran the computer run, and Ed Dwight's name came out, and that's how I got involved in the program. But you can see on this stage the result of what that was all about. I started it. I don't run around taking credit for making any of these stars up here, these great engineers and great scientists, because I was catching hell because my brain was not supposed to be as large as white folks' brains. I was not supposed to be intelligent as white people. But they spread that rumor and just all over the industry that we as black people were not qualified and smart enough and experienced enough to do anything. And look what happens here. This is amazing.
What kept you going, though? I mean, that's what the tools that we need as we're going through these different jobs and the disappointments and things. What was that thing inside of you that really kept you moving forward and not to give up with your dream?
Yeah, that starts when you're a kid, and my mother built me that way. That I was a part of something, going to be a part of something big in my life, according to my mom. She had built his kid to go out and do incredible, smart things. But one of the things she taught me was living in this planet. She talked to me a lot. She's a very educated woman. And she told me a lot about this planet, the Earth. And she was talking to me about lunar cycles when I was 3 and 4 years old. But she taught me all along to keep my mind open and to be curious about how this world worked. But the main thing she taught me was to love this place.
Right.
And so that's how I came to the party with love of America, and how the hell what could I do? And here was a perfect example of what I could do to make this place a better place, and to open up all of these closed doors. And I was just learning about how to do that. I went to white schools all the way through, so I had no basis in black history about. I didn't know who Harriet Tubman was until I was 42 years old, for Christ's sakes.
Right.
And so I began to learn all this stuff about racial prejudice, but I didn't experience that because of the way my mother taught me not to let that hold me back, and that I could do anything. From the time I was born, for 18 years, this woman came into my little alcove every night and said, you're the most incredible person in the world.
Wow.
And you can do anything.
Wow.
And if, 18 years of that, and I was so small, I was so tiny. My mother said, this boy ain't going nowhere because he ain't big enough to do anything. And so her aim was to take this thing between my ears and do something with it. And so every opportunity that she had to enlighten me about what was going on in this world. and how valuable this world was and how lucky we were to be a part of this experiment, and that there are no other Earths hanging around that we can just run off to if things get bad. And so that's the whole idea of why I kept going after that the space thing didn't work. You know, I looked at it philosophically, was I did my job. I opened up the dialogue, I opened up the conversation, because there was no conversation about blacks in space. It was heretical to all these white giants that were doing space and designing space. There was no place planned to have black people anywhere near this thing. And I was told that time and time again, by the generals, by the captains of industry. You know, you do know you're 20 years too soon, young man. You know, but I knew that my being there started this conversation and put it on their minds. Now, it took a good 20 years for that to work, but you can see that it worked. And you can see by all these stars that you see here, these scientific stars and medical stars sitting on this stage, that we are a part of this place. But the main thing that I found out is that every one of these people love this America. And that's the key to this whole thing. There's no hate on this stage. There's nothing but love. There's nothing but contribution. There's nothing but what can I do to make this place a better place? Amen. And that's been the thing that's been rummaging through my head. And that's when I left here, and I had to do something. I learned, first thing I had to do, learn how to be black. So once I found out that I was black, I was cool. And you know, and once I found out about black history, and I found out what did Harriet Tubman, what did these people do? They stuck with the program. They didn't shrink away and say, let somebody else take care of it. They stood in there and fought. And so I decided, I've done 132 memorials to our black causes throughout history, spread all over this country and Canada.
Amen.
So this is what this whole thing is all about.
Amen, Ed. We asked Joni a minute ago about what she felt when she went to space, and Victor connected you with Wadi while she was on the space station looking down at all of us. And one of the things you said to her was, thank you for not forgetting about me. Now, hey, right? Hey. But now that you've had the chance to fly in space, how did it feel to you when you looked out the window, and how did it change you going to space as an Afronaut?
Yeah. No, you know, it really was an extraordinary experience, because you know how you could go through life imagining things. You know, you just imagine, you know, what is the takeoff going to be like, and what is the atmosphere, leaving the atmosphere, what is all that stuff, and you build that thing in your imagination. And you know, and I had 60 years to create this this imaginary thing that I hadn't experienced and really hadn't hoped to experience, except for you and some other other folks. But after I went, I said, I see what it's all about now. You know, and that completed the story for me. That once I got up and saw this earth from that distance, and you know, see how precious it looks, and I didn't get to see all the way around it. I saw a portion of it, but it was enough to understand, you know, this is worth the fight, because this place is so special. The next Earth is 300 some light years away. They have the building blocks for human existence and stuff. So we're out here by ourselves. We're adrift. And damn it, if we don't take care of this place and exercise some more love with each other, because as Charlie Bolden always says, you know, there is no divisions. When you get up in space, there is no divisions between states or countries or anything of the sort. And you can say have a red state sitting next to a blue state, and there's no line between,
Right.
and they got the same interests because they're right there together. And why the hell can't they get along with each other? This is insane. That when you look at it from that perspective, it becomes a spiritual experience, a hell of a lot more than a practical experience. It becomes a totally spiritual experience, and it reaffirms what you think about what this earth is all about and how we should be protecting it and how we should be protecting each other to protect it. So that's how if it did anything, it changed me. Now, when the booster blasted off, now I have to tell you, that boy scared the hell out of me because well, it is, because I got Victor flew 45 airplanes. I flew 25 airplanes, but I took them off the ground like regular, and I landed them like regular. But when that booster kicked in, I said, "Oh damn!" I thought I thought the damn thing exploded. And then equally, when that thing separated from the capsule, that's a pretty noisy thing too as well. And I said, "Oh God, I know I'm gonna get back because Leland promised me I was gonna get back." So it was cool. It was good.
So it was cool, right?
Yeah.
Ed Dwight, thank you. Thank you for your reflections. Now, do we have time for some questions? Anyone have any questions for retired Captain Air Force Ed Dwight? We have one over here and one over here.
Let me say that it's not more of a question, but just acknowledgement. We are grateful for all that you all have done. And as a representative of the President's Volunteer Service Award Program, today we made contributions in recognizing one of those among you with the President's Lifetime Achievement Award, and that award went today to Dr. Yvonne Cagle.
Amen.
Thank you for setting the stage for the young people to see something. They can see great people that are doing great things every day. And on behalf of the administration, we thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
I think there's another question right here in the middle.
Hi, my name is Ashley Walker. I am a doctoral student at Howard University. I am the founder and president of Black and Astro and the creator of Black Space Week. I want to thank y'all.
Round of applause.
I want to thank each and every one of y'all so much, and Quincy and everyone for celebrating this week. But I also want to acknowledge everything that Mr. Dwight has done in making sure that people like me, my team, like Rob over here, also gets highlighted in seeing the work that you all have done. So I just wanted to say thank you all.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Is that Cyan Proctor back there raising her hand? No, there's somebody behind her.
All the way up, all the way up.
Well, he's young. That's why he's got good eyes. He's young.
Yeah, I'm a comic book artist. My name is Tim Fielder. I wanted to ask Mr. Dwight, you're 90 years old. My dad turns 90 in about 2 months. What is it like to know that you outlived all of that oppression, and you outlived everything?
Oh my God, that's a heavy-duty question. One of the things, staying busy and keeping your brain busy is worth more than all of the good food you can eat and all the exercise you can have. But I've been busy since I was a little bitty kid. I mean, I started school when I was 2 years old, and I've been doing things and keeping my brain active for that whole period of time. And if it wasn't one thing, it was another. But what made it all work is that I was having these successes as a little kid. I mean, Mom started me at school at 2, library card at 4, altar boy for 10 years at 5, Cub Scouts at 6, regular Scouts. And it just went on. And she got me 2 paper routes when I was 8 years old. And I threw papers when I was in college. I was still throwing papers every day. It sounds crazy, but I'm a little kid, and I can read the news every day. And I read the damn news that I was throwing the papers, but I read what was going on in this American place, and they set me up for. Man, I'm glad to be a part of this big thing, this big experiment, because everything I was doing, I was getting some results. You know, and you get results by working your butt off and reading about what you're going to do, preparing about what you want to do. That was the story of my life. So everything I got into, I was well prepared for, and I gave it my all, and that's why all of these things that I've done kind of work. And this mission going up was a completion of that start back there in 1960 of what I started, because that's the only thing that I started and didn't finish, but I got it finished. So thanks to all these wonderful people. It was a joint effort, because everybody up here had something to do with that. They really, really did. And you know, Leland was a spark plug, but you know, all these people up here had something to do with it. And that's what's needed in this country, is this kind of cooperation and love and respect. That's what we need in your job, in your social functions, everything. That's what we need. And I have problems because I get told over and over again, Ed, you're not an asshole. You need to go to asshole school and get a doctorate in being an asshole in order to survive in this environment. You know, and I sit and look at them and I laugh at it, but I sit down and think about that. You know what? And it said, Dwight, you're not arrogant enough. I go to all my openings and stuff, you know, but all these big memorials I do, you know, and I walk around like, you know, like, yeah, how y'all doing? Everything fine? Everything? You got to be arrogant, dude. Get with it. And so I've never reached that point of being arrogant, because every one of these people up here are nice people first.
Thank you, brother. I hate to cut this short, but we're way over time. And I just want to thank our panelists, Victor Glover, Jessica Watkins, Dr. Yvonne Cagle, Joan Higginbotham, and our new Astronaut brother, U.S. Air Force Captain Ed Dwight, retired. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming.
What an extraordinary, fascinating, educational, and inspirational panel discussion that we just had. These are true giants, and we appreciate their contributions, past and present, for the opportunities that they afforded all of us to learn today. And we really appreciate the great contributions they continue to make for all of us. So let's give them one more round of applause. All right, so next, we've had a great morning so far. We will take a 20-minute break, and when we come back, we will carry on our program and finish out for the afternoon. 20-minute break.
right, welcome back. So as I promised, we were going to have a day of, or half day of fabulous, great speakers. We heard from one set and are about to introduce our next panel. And I'll share that, as I mentioned earlier, the Space Council is comprised of 19 space-related departments and agencies from across the federal government. And leaders of those departments and agencies include a number of women, including the Director of Management and Budget, Shalonda Young, and Secretary of Interior, Deb Haaland. And our next panel is really about bringing the importance and contributions of women in space to the forefront. And so I'd like to invite up our next set of speakers to join the stage here. First will be Jennifer Littlejohn, Acting Assistant Secretary, the Bureau of Oceans and International Environmental and Scientific Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. Aisha Bowe, the CEO of STEM Board. Dr. Alondra Nelson, the Harold F. Linder Professor, School of Social Science, Institute for Advanced Study. Tawny Newsome, an actress, Star Trek Lower Decks. And Tahara Dawkins, Chief of Staff at the National Space Council.
Good afternoon, everyone. We've had quite the morning. This morning was fantastic. We had all the astronauts that, really represented traditional space. One thing at the Space Council that we try to do is let the American people know that there is a place in space for everyone. And while the astronauts are fantastic and much needed, we have such a huge representation of other areas of space. So let me just let the ladies here introduce themselves and what they do. I'll start with you, JR.
Well, hello, everyone. First and foremost, it is a pleasure and an honor to be here on a panel like this one. I remember being a young person and laying in my front lawn in Long Island, New York, looking up at the stars and imagining a future. And then watching the screen flare back and forth, Star Wars and Star Trek. And now I sit on the stage with real stars, astronauts, astrophysicists, AI influencers on Time 100 list, actors in The Real Show, and of course, the Chief of Staff at the National Space Council. It is mind-blowing. A little bit about me. I am the Acting Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of Oceans and International Environmental and Scientific Affairs. It's a mouthful. And pretty much we focus on everything from the deepest depths of the ocean to the furthest reaches of outer space and all the environment issues in between. I lead an extraordinary team that is primarily focused on advancing U.S. leadership, diplomacy, and science cooperation in order to preserve and protect our global environment, ocean, and space. And we do this by partnering with a number of agencies and entities. So, for example, we worked with NASA to advance what is the largest, most diverse coalition of countries in the history of space exploration under something called the Artemis Accords, which sort of help us define the rules of the road for outer space in simple terms. In addition, we, and I say we because while I lead this team, it is a team of experts who work day in and day out to help us advance what is a very meaty set of issues. So we work on foreign policy concerns like climate change and water security, food security, air quality. We leverage space assets to do that. We advance large issues through space. We do science dialogues too, but space dialogues around the world with both emerging space actors as well as those who have advanced capacities. We partner with commerce to try to open markets for U.S. industry. We worked on something this past year, which Secretary Blinken endorsed, which is the first ever strategic framework for space diplomacy. And it outlines how we advance U.S. leadership in space how we can partner and expand those partnerships, and equally as important, how we will preserve and work to restore and strengthen our efforts to build a more sustainable, peaceful outer space. That's a bit of what I do. And how I got there, I've been a US diplomat for the better part of 2 decades. And so I haven't always worked in space. I've served in countries like Afghanistan, Thailand, Germany, Timor-Leste, and a couple more. And I've also worked at the White House at the NSC, as well as for the Secretary's policy planning team. So a diverse range of experiences working on issues as wide and disparate as human rights and democracy, environmental and economic policy, and science and tech. So I've been fortunate to have a number of different opportunities to lead in this space, which I think, if I were to say it correctly, is what you need to do if you're going to work in the space industry of the future. You need to be flexible, agile, always ready to learn new things. And so I think the Foreign Service career has well positioned us to do that, because we're going to need, as we go to the moon and beyond, more space diplomats. Little plug.
Thank you. Aisha?
In 2008, Michelle Obama gave a speech where she indicated to the crowd that the American dream includes us too. I had not yet finished my degree in aerospace from University of Michigan, but I honestly didn't think I was going to go much further than that. I was someone who didn't apply to college because I was told that I couldn't, or I shouldn't, or I wouldn't. And when I saw the speech, I said, I don't want to play small anymore. I went and I applied to become a NASA aerospace engineer, after finishing not only a graduate degree in aerospace, but a graduate degree in space systems engineering. And during my career at NASA, I had the opportunity to work with some of the phenomenal minds you just heard from. And what I realized was that I was seeking role models, I was seeking representation, I was seeking opportunity, and I've committed my life to that. Today, I'm the CEO of 3 companies. I own an engineering firm that's been recognized by the United States Department of Defense for excellence in small business contracting, and we support U.S. Special Operations Forces. I have engineers who work for me in 6 states, and we're on a mission to demonstrate the excellence that comes from having diverse rooms. I also am the host of a business show for Inc. magazine, because my businesses have been recognized multiple times as some of the fastest growing in America. But today, I have the unique honor of sharing my journey to space as the first African-American woman manifested to fly with Blue Origin, the embodiment of that dream, my American dream.
We have to give her a round of applause for that. Thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Alondra Nelson. I, too, am glad to be amongst these stars, and also to be here at this important institution that really takes space, discovery, imagination across the spectrum, from science to technology to the arts to history to diplomacy. And so I think it's very telling that our conversation is taking place here, in a place that can hold all of the ways in which Black communities, all communities, come to imagine and think about how they might participate in space. I'm currently a professor at the Institute for Advanced Study, which is a small research institute in Princeton, New Jersey. That was the home of Albert Einstein as a faculty member, and where Robert Oppenheimer was a director for nearly 20 years. So a space that thinks quite a lot about science and technology, and also about its implications for the world. I'm a sociologist of science and technology, and a lot of my work is thinking about new and emerging technologies, including those that have very much to do with space travel, space discovery, space science, and what those mean for us here on Earth and for our aspirations for the future. In addition, I was acting director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, and in that capacity, I was very honored to sit on Vice President Harris's National Space Council as a representative of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and also to work very closely with the National Space Council team on thinking about what we needed to do as a nation to expand opportunities in the STEM fields for people across the United States. So that's me in a nutshell, and delighted to be here.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Tawny Newsome. I'm an actor and a writer, and I'm not an astronaut, but I play a pretty good one on TV. So thank you for having me amongst these people who do real jobs and, you know, probably had to go to a lot more school than I did to get there. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start with you.
Okay. I'm ready.
Ready? You've starred in the Space Force on Netflix, and now you're on Star Trek Lower Decks. What draws you to participate in roles that center around space exploration?
Oh, well, you see, the thing about acting is we don't choose the roles. At least not at my level. We definitely go wherever someone is willing to pay us. So I like to think that space chose me. Like, I wasn't, it's not like I'm, you know, Halle Berry with like a million scripts on my desk being like, what will I do today? It just kind of fell in my lap. Space Force was a series of auditions with Steve Carell and the executive producer Greg Daniels of The Office, and they are just, they're so much fun. I come from the Second City in Chicago, and so they were like, they wanted improvisers, and they had this role of an Air Force pilot who they knew by the end of the season they were going to turn into an astronaut. Spoiler if you haven't watched a show from 2019. And yeah, so I went to a bunch of auditions for that, and it ended up working out great. As far as Star Trek, I've been a lifelong Star Trek fan, so part of me getting that role was having some knowledge and being able to like riff about Trekkie stuff when we did that audition. That's also Trek's first foray into comedy. I'm primarily a comedy actor. So yeah, I like to think that I'm always looking for comedy roles, but what keeps grabbing me are ones that take place in outer space.
Which could be funny, but yeah, so Star Trek actually has a deep history with astronauts and just, you know, seeing, for little girls to be able to see someone that looks like them, you are 100% influencing our next generation of space explorers. So that's very important.
Thanks, I hope so.
Alondra, what core challenges stand in the way of equitable access and outcomes in the STEM ecosystem?
Well, part of it's representation, as we've been discussing. You know, Tawny is such, even if she doesn't have a big stack yet of scripts, I think they're coming, a great representation of what it means to sort of be black in space, be black and be an astronaut. When I was the acting director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, one of the first things I did was call my friends here at the National Museum of African American History and Culture and asked to have in my office of blank walls a replica of Katherine Johnson, one of the hidden figures, mathematician who helped on the Apollo mission, because I wanted to be reminded every day that representation of that kind matters. Like, it matters who has the opportunities to do this kind of work, and to never really forget that. And so I think for, you know, you asked what are some of the barriers. We heard some of them from Mr. Dwight in the last panel, you know, and we also heard some of the solutions. So the barriers were clear. He grew up under Jim Crow. There were things he literally could not do. But I was also moved by the fact that he talked about his mother and the fact that she said to him every night, "You're brilliant and you can do anything you want." And so the struggle, I think, for us as we think about structural barriers, which include, frankly, for women researchers, women scientists, things like harassment, bias, and, you know, not bias and discrimination, but particular types of harassment for women in laboratories. How do we keep people on the career trajectory or the career track when they become mothers, or should they, you know, if they come back into the workforce, or if they want to stay in the workforce while they are mothers or parents and have, or rather have caregiving responsibilities. So how do we allow and create a kind of ecosystem for STEM that's not one size fits all, and that appreciates that some people will be veterans, some will be returning to the workplace, some will never have PhDs or a higher degree, but we have all sorts of jobs that need to be done in the world of the STEM ecosystem that don't require those. And I think fundamentally that the barriers, which are things we know well, are a lot about creating a kind of a sense of scarcity around participating in STEM. One of the sort of principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the United Nations is a right to science. And it is one of my favorite principles from from that UN declaration, because it talks about the right to discovery, right? So that we often think about STEM and access to STEM as being about special people, and there are special people like the extraordinary panel of astronauts that we just saw, but there's also just a general human desire for creativity, for discovery, for imagination, and that belongs to all of us, and all of us can participate in that. You know, I think we've created, particularly in college and universities, where I've spent most of my life, both as a student and as a teacher, a kind of scarcity instead of a generosity and abundance mindset, which means that, you know, you don't pass a certain class and you're out of a certain track, as opposed to saying, what other ways can you use your discovery, and what other ways can you do that? So we have still significant barriers, and I think overcoming them is going to really start with, I think, shifting that mindset about who belongs and who can belong, and understanding that the sort of solutions that we've had in the past are going to require that we don't have a kind of one-size-fits-all model, and that we think about who it is holistically we are trying to encourage and thrive and make thrive. And that really takes, going back to Mr. Dwight, you know, here having his mother, he said his mother came into his cubbyhole every night and told him that he was excellent and could succeed. And thinking about how you do that at scale and how you can do that in institutions.
I agree. The vice president did college tours this last year, and the one thing that we did, she met with space students from all the schools that she went to. And the one thing that we found important was to not just get the engineers. While they were important and they were represented, if we had 10 students, we wanted, you know, the non-traditional space as well, the artists, the communications major, the ones that wanted to do space but they really didn't know how to, because they didn't want to be an astronaut or they didn't want to be an engineer, and that's all they knew. One thing that's important is to allow the children to be able to imagine themselves in space, so that they will pursue these careers, and let them know that these doors are open for you. Okay, Aisha, your role as CEO of Lingo, and through your upcoming spaceflight, how do you hope to inspire and impact the next generation of young girls, particularly those from underrepresented communities, to pursue career in STEM and space exploration?
As a young engineer, I had the privilege of going into several classrooms. And during these journeys, I was always surprised, one, at how honest kids are. I was constantly reminded that I was shorter than they thought that I looked on the internet, and that they were surprised that I was wearing pink and that I enjoyed makeup. I was also surprised that when I told them that I was an aerospace engineer and that I was interested in space and science, and then in some of these classrooms challenged them to draw what an engineer looked like, they never reached for a brown crayon. I'm here, I'm in your classroom, I just talked to you. None of you drew me. And that's because the ideas of what this looks like start really early. And when I had the opportunity to found STEM Board, I had a phenomenal conversation with a gentleman by the name of Forrest Harper at Inroads. And he said, hey, Aisha, we're looking for STEM content and curriculum. And I said, hey, Forrest, you know what? I think I want to build that STEM content and curriculum. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to recruit some of my engineers, and we're going to do it. And so we took 5 years and a portion of our corporate profit, and we built Lingo, which is a self-paced coding kit that teaches students the fundamentals of hardware and software in exposure-based activities. And I didn't think that Lingo was really going to work. I thought it was going to be a labor of love, and we were going to be a STEM program for Inroads. But today, I've given a dozen invited keynotes in foreign countries, and Lingo services nearly 10,000 students, including at Bowie State. And when I think about the content in the curriculum, the thing I'm the most excited about is that I just came back from Switzerland yesterday, so if you see me yawning, that's why. And we launched a documentary in short form where I'm teaching students in Kenya how to create a microcontroller that controls a rocket so they can practice what it might be like to work at a control panel on a launch. And that's the power of representation. That's the power of deciding that I want to be part of the solution to the problems that I see.
Wow, that's actually really incredible. I want to, I want to kind of pull on that international thread. So JR, the United States has long been a space powerhouse, but not all countries have the same resources and invest in space. Beyond your work to promote equity and diversity within the U.S. space ecosystem, how is the State Department helping citizens of all countries access the benefits from space exploration and science?
Thanks for that question. I think I can probably state it very plainly and just say space is for all of us. Full stop. You know, as the leaders in space, I'm very proud of the fact that we have worked hard and we continue to work hard, and you know this more than most, to try to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to benefit from the outcomes of what we discover in space. And it shouldn't matter what your background is or where you happen to be on Earth. Our goal is to ensure that there is a sense of ownership, a sense of belonging in, on, and around space. Now, we do this in a number of different ways. One of them I mentioned earlier was the Artemis Accords, which, in alignment with our strategic framework for space diplomacy, allows us to coordinate right now with about 43 countries, but there are many more, to try to look at ways of how we have conversations about sustainable development in space, how we have conversations about space traffic management, space debris, space safety for our astronauts. You know, all of these kinds of issues and many more are the subject of those kinds of discussions that we're having now to ensure that there is a sense that everybody has a say. So we are encouraging anyone who wants to sign on, whether you are a country that is advanced in your space capacity or you're without capacity at this moment, but you're an aspiring spacefaring nation, you should join the conversation. That's one aspect. Another aspect of what we're doing is, I mentioned a little bit of this earlier, is leveraging space assets to try to create more harmony or balance across the board on things like how we're tracking pollution, right? How we're watching climate change, how we're managing natural disasters and helping countries who find themselves in a very difficult circumstance. I think off the top of my head of Bangladesh, for example, that has traditionally about a third or somewhere in the neighborhood of 2/3 of their water flooding. There are people who have been killed, hundreds and hundreds of thousands who are often affected disproportionately by the effects of the flooding. But now, since they've been using our space data and information, they've been able to better forecast ahead of time. And it's those kinds of simple uses of space, by the fact that we make it free and accessible to all, that others are able to benefit from the fruits of all of our essential labors, right? And so those are just a couple of examples. Another, I think, is, you know, we often think of how other people are benefiting, but we in the United States also benefit. We have an agreement with the EU where we have access to Copernicus data that has helped us, in FEMA in particular, track forest fires. So this is a two-way street. We're not always the ones who know everything. We are good partners, and in a real deep sense of partnership. And then that's why when we say space for all, we mean it. So that's, I think, an example or two of what we're talking about.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Tawny, how does it feel to represent Black women in a genre that historically is not that has not had too much, you know, diversity? How does that feel to go on there every day, knowing that you are influencing and reaching, you know, women and children from early to late?
Oh, thank you for that question. It feels amazing and it feels crazy because, like, I primarily work in sci-fi. Star Trek is science fiction. And the fiction part of it means that anybody can look like anybody. Like, there are aliens in the Star Trek universe that have 2 arms like humans do, and then an arm that just comes out of their chest for no apparent reason. Just drugs back in the 60s, probably. So the idea that, like, in science fiction, or I say this all the time about fantasy, when you see, like, a big, huge show that has a bunch of dragons in it and no Black people, and I'm just like, y'all could imagine dragons, but not just, like, a Chinese man? What are we doing? So it feels absolutely nuts to me because it's the most inventive genre Science fiction is my favorite for that reason. I also write on the upcoming show Starfleet Academy, which will be a new Star Trek show. And we're able to, yeah, thanks. We hope it's good. We'll see next year. But you know, like the things we're able to dream up in the room, like if someone says, oh, well, you know, we can't really do that because of gravity or anything, you can just wipe it away and go, oh no, we'll create a Q particle bubble and someone will warp away. Like, you know, you can make it up. So I'm always like, the diversity part should be not even easy. It should be just like a no-brainer because we're not bound by the same like rules of Earth or the same like prejudices or racism that you have on Earth. These are aliens. This can be anything. So it's both very important to me, and sometimes I feel like a crazy person because I'm just going, why? Look at these aliens. Everyone has an insane forehead ridge. Who cares what color they are?
100% agree. Now I'm never gonna watch Star Trek the same anymore. I'll like, okay.
Right. You're gonna be looking at all the forehead ridges, huh?
I am, and the arms coming out of the chest. Alondra, I'm actually going to just get to the question on this. How critical is assessing the persistent inequity in the American STEM ecosystem to maintaining American leadership in STEM?
Yeah, this is a critical question. I mean, all of our, you know, certainly in science and technology policy, our kind of greatest aspirations require that we have lots of people, young people, people across the career trajectory working in these spaces. And, you know, frankly, from a policy perspective, a politics perspective, if we're looking at a time in which we're having diminishing immigration, you know, including folks that work in science and technology fields, all the more reason we should do this anyways. We need to be investing in people here now and their ability to work however they want to, and this kind of big, beautiful kind of STEM possibility that is, you know, before us. And so it's not only about, I think, you know, thinking about the sort of the barriers that we face, but also really working proactively to make sure that we have a STEM teacher pipeline, that we're really meeting people where they are, that whole person, as I mentioned before, that we're providing holistic support to people. You know, but there were kind of very basic fundamental things. So if you get a fellowship from a federal funder, should that include childcare for women? I mean, if you want women to be active scientists or active researchers, or, you know, how do we fund them? And also, I think, thinking about accountability, like really, you know, following up on the commitments that we make and checking those. When I was working at the White House, we were able, in part with the support of the Vice President, to help stand up a new initiative called the STEM Opportunity Alliance that's now going into its second year. And it's a collaboration between the Doris Duke Foundation and the American Academy, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and it sits at AAAS. And that launched with $1 billion in commitments across the STEM ecosystem. So instead of thinking about the one incredible community-based organization that's doing great work to get students into high school STEM programs, or the one excellent college program, the one amazing program, there's a program at Boeing that's been very successful in getting women back, women scientists, women researchers back into the workplace. How do we think about that whole ecosystem? How do we help these already incredible organizations, institutions, programs, and initiatives pass the baton to each other to make sure that they're not just competing for funding, but also helping to enrich this kind of larger ecosystem? And how do we do that at scale? And how do we do that by taking seriously issues of equity, issues of bias, discrimination, and harassment, not as blockers to the work, but a kind of honesty that we need to have, much like Mr. Dwight, about, you know, if we're going to do the work well. So that's, you know, thinking about equity and excellence in STEM together, and practical ways to do that and to actually have accountability about that has been critically important. And the STEM Opportunity Alliance, which I commend to you, you know, has a mission to, you know, really advance equity significantly with demonstrable data and evidence by 2050. And so I hope that you'll participate, and I hope that you'll hold them to it.
It seems like a long time, but really isn't. 2050 is right around the corner. Aisha, as the first Black woman scheduled to fly with Blue Origin, can you share what this milestone means to you personally and for the broader community?
You know, I struggle with this. It's very difficult to put it into words. I'm incredibly proud to be among a series of flights that are designed to address things that should be different in society. Earlier we heard from Ed Dwight, who at 90 got a chance to see his destiny fulfilled. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I gonna rise? How am I gonna meet the moment? But I'm constantly reminded that it's not my moment, it's our moment. And since the announcement, I've had the opportunity to go to STEM schools in Cairo. I've spoken in Croatia, I've been in Kenya, and I've been in the Bahamas. And the Bahamas is very important to me because my dad immigrated from the Bahamas in the late 80s. And I can tell you that me going to space was nowhere on the list of things that they thought I could do. It's still a funny conversation because my grandfather, who just turned 92, told me that he doesn't know how long he's sticking around, but he's definitely sticking around for this flight. But that type of reaction reminds me that I have a unique platform here to talk to women and girls around the world, to communicate to people in countries who have not yet had the opportunity to participate in space, and do it in a way with a partnership with Blue Origin where we really have the opportunity to inspire the world. And before I turn over the mic, I just want to do a wild shout out for the US State Department, because I've had the opportunity to be in country speaking because I've been an invited speaker. And my next tour, which is through India, will also focus on space travel, which I had to ask if it was going to be like right about the right time and I could talk about space. But I'm so delighted to have the opportunity to be able to say, you don't have to grow up knowing that you want to be an astronaut to become one. You don't have to want to even be in STEM and science to be important, because we know some of the most important people are the ones who control the budget. And you don't have to decide how you are going to plot the path for your career. All you have to do is wake up every day and try.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start with you, Jared, but I would like you all to answer this question. What advice do you all have for space enthusiasts interested in pursuing a career like yours?
In terms of advice, I think I mentioned earlier the importance of flexibility and clear communication, very important. But my honest advice is not the advice I would have formally put out there, is a couple of things. One is that a closed mouth does not get fed. So if you want something, you have to go for it. We can sit up here all day long and talk about all the extraordinary opportunities that are right in front of you if you only reach. But if you're not reaching and letting people know, then people aren't going to be around to kind of coordinate you, you know? It just doesn't work that way. So I would say that's one bit, and that's probably for any area of work, but particularly in the sciences, I think in technology spaces, because there are so few, particularly people of color in those areas, that it would be, I think, important to do so. The second thing I would say is, think about what is your platform. You kind of hinted on this, I think, well, is how are you going to use your platform for good when you get it? What is your plan? You know, we only encumber these opportunities, we were talking about this beforehand, for a very brief period of time. You know, you think it's going to be a life generational, but it can be a few moments. So you need to think about how much good can you do with the opportunity, and that will motivate you in this space. And then the last thing is, I go back to my opening again, which is, you know, being extremely, extremely flexible and nimble. At least if you're interested in a career in the Foreign Service and you'd like to be, or at the State Department broadly, you still are required to be very flexible, because change is a constant feature of our work. And our best people are those who adjust quickly. They're all, the baseline is SMART, period. You know, that's just the baseline. From there, it's how can you think quickly on your feet
how can you engage, and then how can you get in the game of innovation and thinking about new ways for us to tell this part of America's story, new ways for us to help other countries tell their story in space as well. Because as I said before, space is for us all. And if we're gonna go to the moon and beyond together, we have to be able to collaborate and cooperate in a peaceful, transparent, open manner. So I would say that would be some of my advice.
I would encourage them to commit to being completely and totally unrealistic. I don't think that anything good comes from realism. I today am just sitting in front of the crowd, and I'm so excited because I'm going to have the opportunity to fly on a commercial space flight. When I was in middle school, that opportunity didn't exist. When I was in high school, that opportunity didn't exist. And when I was in college, some of the ideas around creating that opportunity exist, but most of it was still in the realm of science fiction. And now it's a fact. And so I think if you want to have the opportunity to change the world, you have to have the courage to completely and totally commit to your dreams and the things that you think should exist, regardless of what those around you say shall exist.
Two bits of advice I'd offer. One is to find people who give you accurate mirrors of yourself, right? So the title of our panel is Her Story, and the story that we hear about women and about women of color in science and technology laboratories and science and technology policy, diplomacy, are not the stories that we would say about any of us or in the arts about ourselves. And so who are those people that provide you accurate mirrors about who you are, about your value, about your worth, and about your sort of endless, sort of capabilities and possibilities? So I think that's, for all of us, I think is a constant sort of lifeblood. I think that that really can keep us all going. And then I think second would be to, be willing to work hard on things that you love and be willing to find the things that you love. And I think that means embracing, coming back to what I said earlier, that some aspect of science and discovery and imagination is for all of us. It is the inheritance of all of us. And there's a piece of that that's for you. And so I think none of us should ever feel like science and technology, space is something that is exclusionary, that doesn't include us, that there's not a part of this that that can be an anchor for us, so that we can think about, participate, contribute to, think about the policy space of, think about the creative, the robotic space of. So I would encourage people to insist on being a part of the we as we think about STEM and space in the policy space and the diplomacy space and the art space and the entrepreneurship space.
I think I must have accidentally taken Aisha's advice a long time ago of being completely unrealistic and not known it, because choosing a career in acting is unrealistic and frankly insane. But if you want to do it, it's not just enough to be, talented. It's not just enough to be disciplined. There takes like a real, a need of, you really need to know yourself in a way, like a real self-awareness, so that you can be really objective about your abilities, your talents, your wants. Just because you can do something, does that mean you really want to, or are you just trying to get to the next kind of, lily pad? And just because you're good at something, does that mean you want to keep doing that type of thing? I got to a place where I was sort of turning down certain types of roles because I was good at it, but it wasn't feeding my soul, and I was kind of feeling like, oh, if I'm in this career that's so like hard and thankless, and it's completely unnatural to have your face, body, and personality be the product and service that you're selling. Like, we wonder why actors are crazy. It's designed to make us that way. But so if you're taking roles that don't also feed the soul well and the creative well, then you need to know that and not just be kind of like chasing the brass ring of success. The other side of my life is being a writer, and I actually do have really good concrete advice for that. Actor advice is kind of like, good luck, sorry. Sorry to your parents, I hope you don't have student loans. But if you want to be a writer, specifically a TV writer, my main advice is to read as many TV pilot scripts as you can. They are available everywhere. They are online for shows that you love that have been on the air forever, for shows that have just come out. You can get on certain lists to read new things or to read pilots of shows that didn't end up going. But the way I became a writer was because I'd been an actor for a while, and I'd gone through 5, 6, 7, 10 pilot seasons, where during pilot season you read maybe 30 scripts sometimes a year. And so I realized that I had read so many pilot scripts, all genres, comedy, half-hour, hour-long drama, and I had absorbed the mechanism of a pilot script. And they say TV's formulaic. It is, for a reason, because in order to deliver new ideas, sometimes we need kind of a formulaic structure for people to latch onto. And if you read just like hundreds and hundreds of scripts, you're going to have that so ingrained in you. And you can do this on your own. You don't have to pay anyone to teach you how to write a pilot. You can if you have the money. There's great programs out there. But if you don't, I think it's completely reasonable to pursue that career in a self-taught manner. And I think more people should, especially people of color.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up for audience questions. Do we have any questions for any of the panelists? We have a microphone coming.
Hello, my name is Eliza Lane, and I'm an undergraduate at the University of Michigan. And I had a question for the whole panel that as an undergraduate, me and the rest of my class of college students have grown up in a time where we can't even remember a time without cell phones or without the internet. So as a result of that, the internet feels like our second home, and our friends can be across the globe of different backgrounds, different religions, different political backgrounds, but they feel like our next door neighbors. So my question to you is, what message would you want the space nerd side of my generation to tell the rest of our generation?
One of you have to take the question.
If you could just do the last part of the question one more time.
Here we go, back again.
I think she's asking for the younger space nerds in the audience, what advice would you give them to give their cyber neighbors that don't necessarily know a whole lot about space, and am I kind of getting it?
Yes, that's correct.
That's a tough question. I might be one of those neighbors.
I would say that they only think that they're not space nerds or space fans, right? That I think, what we heard from the prior panel, what we've heard from JR is about how much space is part of our lived experience in the day-to-day, GPS, climate, how we fight wildfires. So, we think of space as something over there and abstract, but the science, the work, the insights from all that's happening around us, above us, the debris, the satellites that are kind of constantly going up, their implications for how we can do astronomy, what it means for low Earth orbit. I mean, it's such a dynamic space that it actually is, I would say to your friends, impacting them every day in ways that they don't even, know and anticipate, and they should want to know more about that.
I'll just add to that space is to better life on Earth, and I think there's a representation out there that we're trying to leave Earth, and it's not that. It's what we're doing in space is to make life here on Earth a lot better, and all the examples from today, the examples that we've talked about here, we're already using it every day. Just if you have a cell phone, you're using it. There are satellites that are giving you that reception. And then all the future good that space can do, it's for make life here on Earth better.
I want to tap in real quick and first, go blue. And secondly, I think that as someone who has family members from a country that does not have a space program, I think that in the beginning, there's this idea of, well, there's no room for me to go with that dream. And so since it's not for me, I don't necessarily want it. But the moment that you roll out the opportunity to participate and people can see themselves as part of the dream, then they want to become part of the dream. And that's one of the things that I think is so important about this week and the panel and the conversations, is because what we're saying to the world is this: here's an invitation. You can come, you can fly in commercial missions, you can come, you can be part of space exploration, because there are no boundaries when you look at Earth from the sky.
You have a question here?
Yes, hi. I just want to first say thank you, all of you, for being here and for representing women like me in spaces that I want to be in the future. I am an organizational strategist who, at the end of the day, I like to take care of people who take care of the planet, and I did just take that from Mr. Dwight earlier. But my question for you all would be, what initiatives do you want to see or that you see in your respective industries that takes care of that humanistic side of you? Or I guess, where at work do you find yourself more grounded when you guys are fighting fires, saving other people, and really just being a magnifier for people like us?
Well, I can start off and say that grounding for me is in the fact that everything that my bureau does actually does focus on saving the planet and the people on it and the species all around. And so I have, I think, an incredible opportunity in this very brief period I have to lead in this space to make the world a better place by empowering the extraordinary people who work with, for, and around me in the best ways I can, whether it's fighting for resources or telling the story or showing up when they ask me to do things or advocating, negotiating. All of those things ground me and give me hope, because I know that every day when I wake up, and I can see it, and when I talk to my folks who work with me, when they wake up, they are proud of what they're doing. And space fits in this. I have to get back to space. In that space is a great enabler of all of the good work that we're doing, whether it's addressing plastic pollution or climate change or environmental degradation. All of those things come from the abilities and the assets that we have from space. In addition, I would say, just to your colleague in the back, I'm not going to say go blue. You know, your question was a prescient one, and I think it's really important that we do focus, because they're connected, in my view, on how much good we can do with the work in outer space, and not just going up, but what we can do here on Earth, and that it is an enabler of all the things that we've talked about today.
I wanted to let you know really quickly. I'm a serial plant killer. Plants come to my place and they die. And I don't know why, but it's just something that I've been afflicted with since I was born. And I want to mention this because one of the things that we did at Lingo was we created a lesson called Plant Health. And it's a little sensor kit, and it teaches kids how they can interact with their plants so their plants don't suffer the fate that my plants do. And I remember teaching this class, and the kid said to me, so well, wait a second, are you telling me that I can build things, and I can talk to the environment, and I can protect my environment, and I don't have to wait to graduate from a college that I may not be afforded to attend to do so? And so I view my role here is to show all of these little playbooks of, as much as I enjoyed working in the government, there's also a role to play for commercial space. There's a role for you to play. If you see something, create it. If you want it, go make it, go do it. And you can work in partnership with the organizations that have the reach or the funding or the ability so that we can create the things that we want to see represented in this world.
So we got to wrap up, but I want to say this morning, General Miller mentioned being on the shoulders of giants, and you ladies are just that, and so really appreciate you spending your time here to talk to us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a great panel discussion that was. Let's give them another round of applause. Our next panel, which will be our last panel of today, is a look at the future. Taking us to the future, we're just getting started. We will hear from young leaders, educators, and scientists who will discuss the education and career paths for the future of space. I'll introduce our panel members, starting with Mr. Jordan Smith, who is a Commercial Space Transportation Safety Inspector at the Federal Aviation Administration. Lieutenant Delia Sly, Executive Officer, Space Delta 18 at the National Space Intelligence Center. Kiana Wilson, researcher with the Cosmological Physics and Advanced Computing Group at Argonne National Laboratory. Dr. Hassan Moore, Chair of STEM Department at St. John Paul, the Great Catholic High School. Daley Russ, Manager of Talent Acquisition and Mobility at SES Space and Defense. And finally, our panel moderator, Naya Butler-Craig, an aerospace engineering PhD student at the Georgia Institute of Technology. Welcome, panel.
Okay. Am I on? Can y'all hear me? Excellent. Okay. I am beyond elated to be here today and looking at all these beautiful smiling faces back here for the second annual Black Space Week event in person. And I am honored to be the moderator for this distinguished panel. And so I want to start by first asking you who you are and give us a little bit about what you do. Let's start from the left.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Mm-hmm. All right. Good afternoon. I am Jordan Smith, an aerospace engineer, but more specifically, I am a safety inspector with the Office of Commercial Space Transportation. So what that is I ensure safe space transportation for launches all over the world, whether that be from New Zealand, from Florida, from California, from Virginia. And by ensuring safe space transportation and public safety, I make sure that everything goes smoothly, so no individuals in the public are affected and no property is affected as well.
Thank you, Jordan. Lieutenant Delia. Hello, my name is Lieutenant Delia Sly. I am the executive officer for the Space Delta 18 in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. I have a background in aerospace engineering and physics, and I'm a graduate from Tuskegee University. Excellent. Kiana?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiana Wilson. I'm a very early career astrophysicist and burgeoning science communicator. My research mainly focuses on cosmology, so investigating the largest questions about our universe, like the evolution of galaxies, the nature of dark matter and dark energy. And I'm very, very passionate about representation in STEM and making science and the STEM fields and space industry fields more accessible to marginalized people.
I love it. Dr. Moore?
My name is Hassan Moore. I'm currently an educator at St. John Paul, the Great Catholic High School. I've been an educator now for about 22 years. I received an undergraduate degree in physics. I did go on to work on at Argonne National Laboratory in the Atomic Physics Wing. I also worked in industry at Entergy Corporation. I've done a lot of things, and I think all these things sort of lend to my background. Now you just find me sort of in the trenches, educating kids. And it takes people to be in the trenches. If any of you guys are educators in this room, that's what it takes, especially for our people. Sometimes you might not get home early enough, let's say. We may take a little extra time, but if you have that commitment, if you really are a teacher, you'll do it. If anybody who knows me As a teacher, that's usually where you'll find me, in the trenches with the kids.
I love that. Thank you for that point. I intend to revisit that. But finally, Ms. Russ.
Sorry, can you hear me? My name is Daly Russ. I am on the industry side, so I do not have any space degree, technology, physics, none of that. I've got my degree in HR management and organizational development, and I'm on the talent acquisition side, so I'm here to help people on their journey from the point of hire, hopefully through promotion, and helping them grow throughout the organization. I too, like Kiana, am really here to make sure our people are represented, they have a voice, and that they have a seat at the table.
Excellent. And so as you've heard from our wonderful host here, that we're looking to talk about forward-thinking messages. So what does the future of space look like, and what does the future of Black professionals in space look like? And so to start that conversation off, I think Kiana is an excellent start, because not only is this organization and event so valuable for the connection, but I think what's so special about it is that you can truly come as you are. There's no code switching needed here. This is a family reunion. We're all cousins, we're family. You don't have to be as polished as the beautiful ladies that were previously seated on this stage. I myself am a little rough around the edges, but this is where I feel comfortable because I'm among people that understand me. But obviously that's not always the case in our professional careers. And so for you, Kiana, as a Black queer woman, how have your experiences as such shaped your career decisions?
Yeah, this is, I could talk at length on this question, but I guess I'll just start by saying it's very difficult to sort of articulate or express the power in seeing someone who looks like you, who moves like you, who comes from similar backgrounds as you, who can share in many of the identities that you have, doing the thing that is your dream. And once you sort of experience that, it gives you this, this mental freedom, I like to say, and this emotional power to bypass all of the limitations and constraints and systems that society tries to project onto you that tell you it's too hard or it's not possible or you don't belong. And you say, forget all that. I'm gonna do it anyway because I saw that person do it. I saw that it's real and I can have it. And this is something I personally experienced. You know, I grew up in, you know, the hoods of Houston, Texas. I was a poor little Black girl, and when I was 10 years old, I told my family, I'm gonna be an astrophysicist, to everyone's complete shock and confusion. And the road to even getting to college itself was very difficult for, you know, there are a lot of financial barriers, a lot of, you know, systemic barriers, but I really, really had to fight to even get to college to begin with. And then when I got to college, there's a lot of sort of imposter syndrome, which is something I'm sure many of us can relate to, that just was compounded by the fact that I was feeling so intensely lonely and isolated. Because not only did I see no other Black women in my cohort, but no other queer Black women. Like, there's nobody who looks like me doing the things that I do. And so when I finally did find other Black women in physics, it was literally life-changing. It expanded my worldview. There are so many Black people, so many Black women doing physics, working in the space industries. Like, we're all here gathered together, right? And so that has, I'm very intimately sort of connected with that power that representation has. And so my career wouldn't be complete if I only focused on myself and didn't make space to sort of give back and to be someone else's reason for their worldview expanding and giving them that power of representation.
Please clap. That was excellent. And what I love about this panel and just how unique everyone's perspectives are is that Dr. Moore is actually the head STEM coordinator at a high school. And so you've got Kiana here who does science communication through social media, which is very palatable and relates to the Gen Z younger generation. But but you got Dr. Moore, who has the perspective of working with these students every day. So I'd like to ask you, Dr. Moore, what are the things that are engaging students the most at this stage of their development, especially as it pertains to STEM and space education?
That's definitely a tough question because I have a generational disconnect, if you will, in that I'm in my mid-50s and I'm trying to relate to 16 and 17-year-olds. And so I'm trying to, I guess, stay on the edge where they are as well. And that's tough. The good thing is I do teach kids who are very interested in what it is I offer. So I teach robotics courses. I have dual enrollment courses I teach with George Mason. I teach the differential equations and Calculus 3 course. So in a way, that makes life easy for me because I tend to have kids who, they definitely care. I did teach at schools where it wasn't as easy. But I think I'll go back like you did and kind of start. I'm also from sort of a poor part of New Orleans, Louisiana. And if I learned nothing else growing up in a poor neighborhood, it was sort of how to relate to people, how to get along, because if you didn't know how to get along, I mean, you get thrashed. And so I learned to relate in different spaces as well. I lived in DC. I've sort of been all over, and I've taken all these different experiences and sort of put them all together. And now I have this compendium of who and what I am. But I would say I learned a lot of good lessons. And I think the thing I came up when Malcolm X, I guess, was, he discussed the cycle of poverty. And I saw the only place that you'd break that cycle of poverty was at the education level. And I know growing up in the 70s, one thing I would say that really helped form me was that I could never go out in public and disparage anyone, as in anyone. My mother would, anyway. I can't talk about these things now, right? But there was a time, and there used to be a level of pride in our community. We didn't want to look bad in front of each other, right? It's like, no, you're not going. You go to church, you were like, yeah, you're going to be, you're in your poor clothes, but you're going to make them look nice. And I don't know, I guess coming up that way, it just kind of helped form me, kind of in in the way that I am now. I really care about the kids, and I think that, what the old saying is, kids don't care what you know until they know that you care. And I think I carry that with me everywhere I go. And for me, because I taught at the University of Alabama at Birmingham for 10 years. I was a tenured professor, got the associate professor. And I realized, even there, I mean, there's so many needs. And if you're not willing to really give all of what you have, those kids pick up on it in a New York second. And before you know it, they just won't believe in you anymore. And as educators, that's hard because I have a son, I have a wife, I have a house, I have responsibilities. But I also have this responsibility that I sort of promised that I would, dedicate myself to. And so to a kid, it's hard when you get an office hour and you have 20 people in there, right? But you do the best that you can. You try to, say, well, you caught on fast. I mean, can you go and help with that problem? I mean, because it's the same problem. And then, you learn to triage, some of the problems. But I'm sort of thankful for all my experiences, from poverty to, my wealth. I'm kidding. Of being a high school teacher. In the Catholic school, we get paid even less than the public school. So, but we do a lot with a little. But we have that one core tenet, and that is that we care. And without it, don't be a teacher unless you really care for these kids.
That's beautiful and really good salient advice for any educators out there. And thank you for your service. Okay, so switching gears just a little bit, just because we're talking about engaging the youth and engaging the next generation, I'd like to pick on your expertise, Ms. Rush, as a hiring manager, and even watching the landscape of the space industry change right before our eyes so much, from government to commercial, industry, it's wild. And so as a hiring manager, what type of advice would you tell those on the current job market to look out for, to focus on, to bolster or strengthen their resumes?
Sure. Great question. Thank you. I think we've touched on it on every panel today as well. We talked about that earlier. so I may regurgitate for you guys who have been here before. But I think what is missing is a focus on soft skills. All right, I think we all can build our resume, we all can have degrees at many different levels, but if you are not a good team player, if you cannot communicate well, those play a huge factor into success in your career, regardless of what field you go into. So whether it's space, education, all of that, right? You've got other teachers that you may have to communicate with to develop a plan. I really think what we are lacking is providing that knowledge to our young people. They're smart, trust me. I've got interns who are way smarter than me, and I'm so happy, right? But we're still typing in our slang, right? Sometimes they're responding to a senior leadership member, BTW, and they don't know what that means, right? I know what it means, just a little bit, but you know, just teaching some of that professional etiquette and communication and those life skills are so important. I would give that advice, and then I think we've heard the word resilient 1,000 times today. It applies to our population, to me, at a multitude more. And being resilient, because you're going to hear no, you're going to get rejected on that resume, but you got to keep applying. I went to school for PT. Here I am in HR. That was not for me. I got my business degree, fell in love with HR, and you know, I truly want to help people. I want to help us, but I want to help everybody. And to do that, you have to have those life skills.
Excellent. I think that's a good segue to Lieutenant Delia, a part of the U.S. Space Force, and I think that's so cool. I didn't even last a week in Air Force ROTC, so hats off to you. I cannot run a mile, not yet. Anyways, with regard to the soft skills and the resiliency and the things that Ms. Russ had just noted as things to look for, especially on the current job market, how have those tenets played a factor in your career, and how important has it been?
I think it's played a huge part in what I'm doing right now, especially like growing up in a PWI, and you know, I didn't see myself that much growing up, so I felt like I needed to make sure that I made ways to open those opportunities for myself. Soft skills, that's important. Being able to have the etiquette to speak to different people. You're going to find yourself in so many different environments, and you're gonna have to learn to communicate with people of different backgrounds, and you don't know until you're in that environment how important it is. For example, I am working at a National Space Intelligence Center. For those of you that don't know, that is a center full of introverts. And of course, people in STEM, I understand they can have their ways, and you know, they can be in their bubble, but you still have to learn to communicate with those different people in order to do business. And just as she was saying, Ms. Russ was saying, you have to have those soft skills in order to communicate, and it plays a huge part.
I was sure, considering leveling up in any type of military background requires so much of that, so hats off to you. But I do kind of want to change gears to asking about your job in the Space Force, if you can share with us. What do you do on the day-to-day?
I will share what I can. So currently I am the executive officer to my commander, Colonel Marcus Randall of Space Delta 18. Like I said, we are an intelligence center located in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. And my day-to-day looks like managing schedules for senior leadership and making sure that they are where they're supposed to be when they need to be there. I think that's the line we have to draw.
Yes, soft skills,
soft skills.
Discretion, I love it. Understood. The reason I ask is because there's been a theme of talking about the various opportunities there are in space. So it's not just about rocket scientists and physicists and astronauts, but there's a whole host of other opportunities that are available within this very niche industry. And that's from government to commercial to industry to wherever you're looking within the space industry. So that brings me to Mr. Smith. As a commercial safety officer, correct me if I'm wrong, one, what do you do? And I do want to ask a second part to that question. I can repeat it later if you need me to. But how often do you see safety prioritized in the aerospace industry?
So, I am a safety inspector.
Inspector.
So, with the job title, safety is the biggest proportion of my job. We want to make sure that us as people are completely safe, and whatever commercial satellites are going up into space, whatever DoD satellites might go into space, whatever astronauts or might go into space as well. So companies have a myriad of ways to make sure how safety is implemented, and they all have the same goal in mind, and that is to get the advancement of the humanity to beyond the stars. And I ensure that we do that as safely as possible.
Sorry, that one deserves a clap, and I'll clap on myself. Reason being is, and I don't want to talk too much, but the theme that I've seen just, growing up in the aerospace industry is that everybody gets caught up in how fun everything is, how cool it is, and how exciting it is, but not often enough do we ask why, what we're doing, who are we affecting. And so those are the things that I think, especially as this space continues to evolve, that we should focus on, and that there are plenty of opportunities and jobs out there for people that care about those things. So I just wanted to highlight and thank you for your work, because that's so important. Now, I want to ask back to Kiana. So we're talking about the future of space, and we're talking about how it's evolving and being revolutionized. And I know you didn't want to answer this question, but it's too good. If you could have it your way, what would you envision the space industry to be like?
I will say the reason I didn't want to answer this question is I feel like it's too optimistic, it's too ambitious. And I'm just a very optimistic person. I'm also primarily a theorist, so by nature, I come up with theories for things that don't always have the most practical solutions. But I guess I would say, space is one of those concepts that are so far removed from the everyday challenges that we experience here on Earth as humans. And especially as, people of marginalized identities, we have a lot of things that we have to contend with here in society on Earth. And if you're working in something like astrophysics, for instance, or you're working in aerospace and you're trying to send things to space, it's kind of hard sometimes to make that connection between how you can support the demographics you want to support here on Earth through the work that you do. And I've contended with this myself. Most of my job is like thinking about how galaxies formed and what dark matter is, and I'm like, what does that have to do with institutional racism or solving the climate crisis? And I would be remiss if I didn't say that oftentimes I use my astrophysics as an escape from those problems, because sometimes I do feel like it might be easier to win a Nobel Prize for solving dark matter than to solve the hunger crisis. And I think when you extrapolate that to the space industries, which have historically been usually motivated by financial reasons or political reasons. Don't crucify me, I know we're in DC. Rather than sort of the public good at times, it's even more easy to forget those real world impacts. And I think it would be just a huge disappointment and regret and failure if we sort of had too much tunnel vision in trying to solve the problems related to space without using all of, these industries have the most promising resources and talent and brain power to solve so many of the issues we have here on Earth. And I just think it would be a huge failure if we didn't, in conjunction with our passions for solving the problems we have in space, to also use all of the resources we have and the brain power we have and the leaders we have to solve the problems here on Earth too. So I guess it's a very roundabout way of saying, very ambitiously, I hope that we maintain the humanity in a lot of the work that we do in the space fields.
And she didn't want to answer that. I put you on the spot because I do think that that is a core reason of why we gather, right? Because we want to imagine the futures that seem impossible, but we know that there's too many capable minds in the room for us not to realize those dreams. And considering that we're the future, we have talked and heard from the giants whose shoulders we stand upon, and they've got the baton out like this, and it's up to us to take it. And it's your, that visionary mindset that you have is what's going to take us far. And so I want to stay in that vein with Dr. Moore, kind of asking, how can we as scientists kind of, in various industries, how can we help educators not get students excited about space per se, but how do we just support educators better as far as bolstering this new generation of space professionals?
I think it all goes back to the home. If we're raising children who are naturally curious, to tap into their curiosity, it stands to reason. They're going to project their ideas into space. There was a time when we weren't covered with so much light pollution. You can imagine, I love the line with Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. He talks about, that the human species is the only one that would lie on its back and expose its stomach. Any other animal, of course, you'd worry about something, of course, eating you. But we were always fascinated with the stars. And with that came the big dreamers. And with the big dreams come big solutions. They don't come all in one big hit, but they do come incrementally. But it takes for someone to dream it first. It took Kepler to overturn Aristotelian thought. It would take the big ideas, right? It takes someone to say, like if you watch Star Trek from the other young lady, they talk to their wrist or something, and you're like, that's crazy if you didn't have an iPhone. Whereas now you take your iPhone and you go back 1,000 years, they're going to burn you at the stake for being a witch. So things that you dream of, I mean, it at least starts to, the snowball effect, I guess, where the ball starts to roll. And I do agree, we have to do a better job maybe of sort of balancing that with, how do we take care of all our people? I taught astronomy last year, and I remember telling my students, so we learn about the stars. We say, oh, our sun is a star, all right. So stars burn out, right? Our sun is a G2 star. And as a G2 star, we have about another 5 billion years. Nothing for us to worry about, right? But we have NASA. Somebody's thinking about it, right? How do we begin to think about what's next, right? The moon, maybe as a refuel station, Mars as, the next place, some moon of one of our Jovian planets. You have to begin to dream in terms of, what can be done next. And then, some of the bricks began to be put in place to make that dream a reality. So I'm really, as a physicist, I'm very, I love talking. So yeah, right. So I mean, I love ideas, right? This guy Tom Joyner, some of you guys may know, right? Used to say, large minds talk about ideas, average minds talk about things, small minds talk about people. And so I love ideas. I love being a part of this panel, especially with these young folks. And I love just being a part of this everything, the two panels before this. I wish there were more of these, right, to where our kids could begin to dream more, see the potential of what's out there. And I think when they see that, they say, oh, I have an idea that maybe I could change this, right? We do the same thing in engineering all the time, right? If I could just make this one little change, I've now cracked the code, right, to, batteries that last 10 times longer. That alone, that's a Nobel Prize. So I think, I love the idea that you have the big ideas, share them with the world, but write them down because you won't get credit. Make sure you share through writing. I think in terms of, really getting our youth to, also dream, I think, put them in programs. These seats should be filled with people. They should be seeing people. Like you said, you didn't see anybody. I went to all historically black colleges, so it was easy for me because I just saw everybody look like me, right? I was like, oh, black. So I was happy. But I agree, for people to see people who have made it and have done some wonderful things, they should be looking at this panel and saying, hey, I like what you're doing, I like what you're doing, I like what you're doing. That gives you imagination. I think that's part of what's being lost. We've covered up the stars, right? We're losing that sense of imagination. Like I take out this phone, and what's going on now is, because there used to be a time when you could fix your television set, right? You could smell the back of it, and if you know what a resistor smells like when it's burned out, you're like, it's a resistor. What's the value on it? You read red, black, all right, I know what the value is. I go to Radio Shack. What's Radio Shack? I buy the resistor, and I change the resistor, and I fix my television set. But now the abstraction layers are so far removed, right, such that you crack open one of these things, and you won't know what in the world it is you're looking at, because everything's on chips that's embedded within chips, and you can't peel back the abstraction from each of those chips, right? So, but I always thought, even now, I just go back to the basics, right? So I teach robotics. I'm like, let's build a flip-flop. Let's build a data latch. Let's build all the things that make a computer. You have to start to take some of the layers off the onion to say, all right, guys, at the very core of this is this. And the kids say, oh, now I get this. I see how a computer does this, how it latches onto that data. Now I could add another piece of data to that data and get a result. And it's difficult because, again, that took, I'm still learning, right? 50+ years to put a lot of this stuff together, right? Like I said, I was tenured in engineering, but my degree's in physics, and then I've only taught mathematics, so it put me in weird spaces. But then, I ended up teaching robotics and mechatronics and a graduate engineering mathematics course. So I think, yes, I've been afforded the opportunity to do a lot of wonderful things that have helped me grow personally, and now I feel as if I'm going to use that to give back to anyone. And believe me, I can teach anyone almost anything just by knowing how to relate to those kids, to anybody, really. Old people, young people, we just relate.
I love it. I think that's the big SAT word, relate. And you see Kiana does it through social media, and I think what's beautiful about that is so many people are sharing their stories so many various facets of identities are now represented through stuff like social media. I did want to revisit your position, Lieutenant Delia, just because I think with respect to the changing landscape of space, everybody's very excited about commercial space, very excited about Artemis and NASA, but how does the government work, or the U.S. Space Force, what does their role look like in the near and far future as far as space exploration goes?
We definitely want to build on our relationships with the commercial industry. That's what we're harping on. Unfortunately, in my position, I don't work with it personally every day, but if you guys want more information, just come to me afterwards, and I'll put you guys in contact with somebody that can answer that question.
I love that. That sounds good. Yeah, don't forget about government. We still need people to work in the government. I love that. I think we can start taking some questions from the audience, if I'm not mistaken. Excellent. Are there any questions? I see a hand back here.
Well, firstly, thank you all so much for everything you're doing in the industry and just being sources of inspiration. My name is Ashani. I'm an intern with the Office of Space Commerce, and I'm a student at Georgia Tech, so go Jackets. My question's mainly centered on every single one of you, while you are part of the space industry, are part of different facets of it. So you focus on academia or government or the commercial sector, and you also have different backgrounds educationally. And we're seeing that the industry is getting even more interdisciplinary, and it's very important that every individual has an understanding of not just the science or the engineering, but also the policy and the business and those soft skills of interacting with folks. So how can we make that kind of the center of how we're moving forward with education and inspiring students to kind of get an interdisciplinary education and also creating those roles in the industry that are more intersectional and interdisciplinary.
Anybody want to take that? Not all at once.
I'll start, and then we can piggyback off each other, maybe?
Yeah,
Okay,
let's do it.
that.
I'm looking at
A great question. Thank you. It's a pretty tough one. But I think just touching on, I'm going back to the soft skills, right? Because I think that's really important. And starting young in the house, but making sure you are present and involved, right? There are so many groups, communities, National Society of Black Engineers, right? We've got Diversity and Spectrum Council, which I just learned about last week, which supports the space policy side that you mentioned, right? So, you know, there are so many avenues into space, but you have to get out there. You have to network. You got to find the right people. I will tell you, you have to have a great support system. I've got some great supporters in this room with me now. Without them, I wouldn't be on the stage. So creating those people, making sure they're in your back pocket and pushing you along the way, because it matters not if you don't have that. So I think definitely do those things, but intern, what you're doing right now, right? Start early. And I mean, like, I've taken high schoolers before as far as internships and watched them blossom, whether it was at SCS Space and Defense or at a previous company. But I feel like it's all of our role, right, to support that and make sure you all have those avenues to reach out to. So don't be shy, like all of us were before we got on the stage. Reach out, talk to people that you're not familiar with, and just really, really network. That's all I got.
Yeah, I'll go. So, touching back to the skills and the know-how. My degree was in mechanical engineering, and I feel that laid the base work for all of the physics, the mathematics, and those type of skills that helped me in my job and my career. But I also took a speech and debate class in high school. I took a professional technical writing course in college. I took all of these skills that, engineers, we know how to write technically, we know how to speak technically, but people that are business majors, people that are doctors, they have no idea what we're talking about. So those courses help me better relate to people who don't understand what space, what physics, what aerospace, and all of those other STEM disciplines are, speaking about, and how we get from point A to point B and, skip a few steps all the way down to Z, because that's what learning is about. And me personally, I like to learn about everything. If something's on TV, whether it be Animal Planet or real estate or cooking, I want to learn how, the technical aspect and the quantitative aspect of, every single thing. And, some of the challenges is we always feel like there's not enough time in the day to learn. But growing up and moving like across the country to go to college, as I learned that you make time for what you want. You make time for learning. You make time to become proficient in your interests and things that excite you. I want people that look like us on this stage, that look like you all in the auditorium, to make time for stuff that interests them, that you don't think you have enough time in the day for. That when you get off work or when you leave school, to take an hour or two, learn about something new. Because that'll help you relate to somebody else that looks like you, and they may have an inroads to learn or get you to a place where everyone's connecting with the education.
I would say don't be afraid to forge your own path. There's no reason why you can't go and find some professor maybe at your school at Georgia Tech, or go to University of Alabama at Birmingham. If you're not afraid to write papers, and because they don't mind you putting their name on a paper, and if you don't mind writing for research grants, they won't mind that either. But forge your own path. Remember, it's about your curiosity. It's about your education. And if you can swing it financially, I mean, it's worth it, right? You'll never regret having an education, ever. And so if you may have to take a course in something that is just some kind of way you feel it connects to an electrical engineering course that you took or a mechanical engineering course that you took, take it, right? It's for you. This is satisfying your life. And this may be the one time. I can tell you, as a graduate student, I was the smartest I ever was. Now I'm in decline. Do it while you're young. I'm just saying, forge your own path, and I can guarantee you there's somebody, you can talk to somebody in a department around the United States that will probably help you forge that path, if you're trying to get to like the PhD. I had graduate students, so I'm telling you, just go to them sensibly and tell them, hey, this is what I want. You say, hey, that's a great idea, right? Say, I'll put out 2 papers in this area, and I'll, maybe help you write this grant for this, and you might get a thumbs up.
Piggybacking on that, you have to be your biggest advocate. For me, I didn't know that engineering was possible until I was 11 years old. So most of those opportunities, you have to be able to say, I can do this, and then make it happen. So be your own advocate. Look into those resources, whether that's YouTube. We have videos now, social media. You can find all kind of resources there. And just reach out to people. You can reach out to professors, go to fairs. Do they still have those?
Yes. Yes. We do still go to those.
Feel old on stage. But yeah, just going back to those soft skills as well, just being able to communicate with other people and just putting yourself out there.
Yeah, speaking on, forging your own path, I've sort of done this, going very, very interdisciplinary. My second concentration in college was English and creative writing. So I did that and astrophysics, and people would always look at me crazy, like, what do these 2 things have to do with each other? And I will say that, they're just 2 sides of the same coin. They're 2 different ways of making sense of the world around us. One is through, science and research, and one is through storytelling. And storytelling is such a powerful and effective tool for communicating science because it makes people feel things. It leaves an emotional imprint. And I never once ever doubted whether or not I wanted to do one or the other. Even though at some points people told me, you should, focus on the science. In fact, one of the big decisions I've made recently was taking a year off before starting my PhD. And I did that precisely because I wanted time to intentionally sort of establish systems to build my science communication career and invest in the storytelling and the mentorship and the education that I want to do alongside my science career. And I wouldn't have been able to sort of give that time, make space for that if I had gone straight into this very intense, focused thing. So yeah, showing people that it is possible to do interdisciplinary things even when on the surface it seems like they have nothing to do with each other. And something like writing and storytelling is a very soft skill. It's something that you're going to have to be able to do in whatever discipline or whatever career path you decide to take.
That was lovely. And I just want to piggyback off of all of what they said, that with an anecdotal story. You're all familiar with Dr. Mae Jemison, the first woman of color to go to space. She has been my hero since I was very, very young. And it wasn't just because she was an astronaut, but it was because she was an astronaut and a dancer. and I danced my whole life. And I was trying to figure out, okay, do I want to do Alvin Ailey or do I want to work at NASA? And she was the perfect combination of both. And that always inspired me that you don't have to give up parts of yourself to pursue your dream. And I think that honestly, in my lab, I work in an experimental lab where there's a lot of troubleshooting. Things go wrong all the time. And it is so often that I'm pulling from experiences that have nothing to do with science that help me solve problems in the workplace. And so I just wanted to continue to piggyback off of that because that is so powerful. And that's why I think showing up authentically you is so important, because those unique perspectives that you carry and only you carry, you don't want them taken away from you. That's what makes you you. That's what helps you continue to add value to the field. So, sorry. Thank you. Are there any other audience questions? I see AJ in the back right.
Hey y'all, I'm AJ. I appreciate everyone being here. Something that I always ask, and I appreciate the previous discussion, is how do we move from just being interdisciplinary to teaching and showing kids that there's a place for the humanities in space? So my area of expertise is space law, which doesn't fall under STEM. And I come to these things all the time, and it's always STEM all the time. So how do we show and I guess demonstrate that there's a place for ethicists and soft sciences like sociology and things like that, because sometimes we feel left out?
Oh, I guess I'll take that as the. So again, I think I do like about teaching at this one school is I have a lot of flexibility, right? I've written a curriculum for this. I didn't just adopt Project Lead the Way. I wanted to write my own curriculum. And with that, you can add things like an ethics component. There are several things that you can tap into that you'll get in the School of Engineering if you go and major in engineering. But some of those things I wanted to bring in earlier in their career and sort of engage them at the high school level. After school, you could start any program. I had an aerospace, an astronomy club, I had a robotics club, chess club. The problem is there's too few people who are there to do the work. So I would say, if we want these things to happen, you got to get in that space and make them happen. You can start any kind of club at any school, really, and then, make that happen. It's one of those things. Be a part of the solution. It's going to take a lot of your time and a lot of effort, but then I think you sleep better at night. You feel better knowing that, even if it's just like each one teach one. If I could just reach one. I sleep better at night. I feel like I reach more than one, but just get in there and hunker down, and you don't even have to be necessarily a parent at the school. You could be a coach for one of the programs, and it's a matter of what it is you want. Go and talk to the administration. Like if you have, I saw you pushing a stroller. Make that a reality for your kid, and by the time your kid gets there, it's already embedded in the curriculum. Some after-school program, some club, be a part of that, right? Because who's going to care about that kid more than you? My kid's going to the same school where I teach. That is not unintentional, right? That's very intentional. And I plan to have my kid taking my classes. And if anybody's hard on my kid, it's this guy. And that's what it takes, right? Like I said, again, I'm back to forging your own path. Make your reality what it is you want it to be. And like I said, just give of yourself.
Absolutely. Were there any more other questions? Okay.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Erin Kunkel, and I'm here as a mom to a space nerd. He didn't have a choice. We kind of raised him that way. But my question is, just as a parent of middle schoolers and high schoolers, in our district, we have STEM programs, but they're a little bit gate-kept. Only certain students and a certain number of students get into those programs. And so as a parent, in addition to just kind of like I've done today, putting him in a space where they're talking about what he's interested in and passionate about, what else can I do as a parent to kind of support this? Because the programs that they offer at our school, the possibility of him getting into one is slim to none. And I'm the actual chair of a committee that works on getting minority students access to these programs, and it's a constant battle. Like, we keep having the same conversation year after year. And so for him, because I want him to pursue his dream, how else do I support that and get him into those spaces and places that might not be in our public school system right now?
If I may, really fast, shameless plug for Black and Astro. Our founder, Ashley Walker, sitting right here. Please connect. That was it, sorry.
She's absolutely right. You know, if you look, you will find, right? Seek and you will find. And if you don't find, create. You know, we're not helpless, we're not hopeless. We could do whatever it is we want to do. And believe me, with online, I'm sure you can tap into almost any space. So if your child knows, you know, a few more kids at the school, have them form their own space. And they may start off small. They may watch videos of things that they're interested in at first. But it will evolve and it will grow. You know, but you got to get it started. And you can't be afraid to take that initial step. But if you already have programs that have already laid the groundwork, yeah, tap into it, right? Get to, you know, I mean, you're in the same room. Meet this person. You're less than, you know, 25 yards, 50 yards away. You know, get to know, and if you get nothing but an idea from her, right? You may realize how it is he can form his own space.
Can I just, Dr. Moore, did you say you teach space camps? I was wondering.
Yeah, starting next Monday, I teach, I call them STEM camps. So yeah, we do science, technology, engineering, and math. So yes.
There's another connection for you.
And what's the age limit? Sorry.
It's 6th through 8th grade. Yeah, sorry.
Did you have any closing?
Yeah, I have two things. One, come talk to me after this, because I have a lot of programs that I could definitely pitch to you. And two, definitely mentors. Try to reach out to people who are doing the things, who look like you, Black people doing the things that your kid wants to do. And maybe one of them will sort of open the door to you. I personally am very passionate about mentorship. I have a lot of people who reach out to me, and I'm always very intentional about giving back, because I know oftentimes we are in these situations, and I come from, you know, neighborhoods and schools where I didn't have a lot of resources, and I had to reach beyond my most immediate circumstances to gain access to resources. I had to advocate for myself. I had to find them myself. And I think if I would have had if I would have had a Black woman astrophysicist somewhere, and I had reached out to her, and she had sort of opened the door to me and given me resources and access, my time would have been a lot easier and a lot smoother. And so I'm always positioning myself to be that for someone else, and I know there are so many people out there who are willing to do the same as well. So if you see someone doing things that you feel your child wants to do, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
You definitely came to the right place.
And we just echoed each other. I love it. So are there any closing remarks from anyone on the panel? Any lasting words you want to leave with our audience?
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I second that.
Yeah, third that, definitely. I'm going back to the middle schooler as well. Just, there are people that are willing to help. And I think you just, LinkedIn, right? Sometimes it's just a quick message to somebody, hey, I see you do this. My child is really interested. And it can forge lifelong relationships, lifelong mentorship. So again, I said earlier, right, don't be shy, reach out. That's what we're here for. We're all here to help create that path for the next person, no matter what obstacles we have to go through, right? That's what we're used to as a people, right? We're constantly going through obstacles, so we are here to help the next, so that it's not so hard for the next Kiana. So we're here, and we're here to support each other, so don't be afraid.
Yes. I'm sorry, I know we have to wrap up, but I just want to say, although I am in uniform, don't be afraid to reach out to anybody in the military, because they are connected and they do network, so you never know what resources they can provide. That's all I gotta say.
No, that's excellent. Thank you for saying that, because that's important.
Yeah.
And I want to just, off of what you said, we're all here because somebody did it for us too. And so it's only right that we give back. And that's why these organizations, events are so impactful. So I want to give a huge round of applause to our wonderful panelists. Yes. And I will hand it over to Dr. Brown.
All right. Thank you all so much. Give them another huge round of applause. So we are just about done with our programming for today. I really, really appreciate you all for being here and want to say a little bit about one name that has been mentioned throughout the program. You know, as I mentioned, I'm part of the National Space Council. We're hosting this event in support of Black Space Week, but we did not create Black Space Week. Black Space Week was created by a wonderful organization, Black and Astro, and so I'd like to invite members of Black and Astro to stand to receive a round of applause for all of the work that they've been doing to work and build this community. And Naya, she just went backstage, but she's also a member and on the leadership team of Black and Astro as well. And so there are a few of them here, but their group is, what I appreciate about them is that many of them are still students. So they are doing this work of community building across the world, while also earning PhDs, undergraduate degrees, and continually supporting and lifting up each other. And next I want to invite my boss, Chirag Parikh, who is the Deputy Assistant to the President and Executive Secretary of the National Space Council, to join me for a special presentation.
All right. First of all, shout out to Quincy for all the hard work she's been doing. And anybody who has put together a production, in any production, not to mention one that is literally historic. There is a lot of behind-the-scenes work, a lot of goat wrangling, all kinds of stuff, just to get to a point where we were today. So thank you guys, thank you Quincy very much for all the hard work that you do. And I want to also thank our team, Tahara, Samantha, Matt, all of whom are here today, some of the great stuff that they're doing. We're so proud to partner with you. I'm so happy that we had the opportunity to spend some time with you today, to be able to listen to the dialogues, the discussions. I would tell you, from Ed Dwight to the astronauts to the panel that we just heard here, like every single one could have been their own draw and their own attraction along the way. And the fact that we're all being able to get here together means a lot. And so to that point, one last message that I wanted to share with everybody here. It's from a boss of mine. Vice President Kamala Harris wanted to share a letter to our colleagues here, to Black and Astro particularly. I want to read this to you, dated June 17th, 2024, from the Vice President. She says, I'm honored to extend my warmest congratulations to the leaders and supporters of Black and Astro as you gather for your 5th annual Black Space Week. This event celebrates the contributions of Black professionals and enthusiasts in the space ecosystem and highlights the strides being made toward a more inclusive and diverse future. Your commitment to fostering a supportive and empowering environment is truly commendable and aligns with our national goals of promoting equity and opportunity. I am proud to stand alongside you as we work to make the incredible potential of space real for more people across America. As the chair of the National Space Council, I admire Black and Astro's commitment to driving the United States toward a more equitable and prosperous future in space, while working at the intersections of science, art, entertainment, history, culture, and business. Your efforts enrich the space community while also strengthening our nation's priorities, or our nation's position as a leader in this critical field. Thank you for all that you do. May you continue to inspire others and pave the way for many more years of success and groundbreaking achievements. Sincerely, Kamala Harris. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Sharad. So we'll make sure you get the actual letter. Sharad took it that way, but we'll make sure you get it. And with that, we are ending on time. I have one, you're right, we got all this in on time. I have one other announcement to make. I mentioned at the beginning that this is like a family reunion. What family reunion doesn't include some good fun and food and other things. And so I want to share a special invitation from our friends at Blue Origin. They are hosting a reception from 4 to 6, so just a little bit more than an hour, at the City Club of Washington in the Members Lounge, which is at 555 13th Street Northwest. Again, that's from 4 to 6 at the City Club of Washington. And this is hosted by our friends at Blue Origin. Some of them are sitting over there. You've heard them mentioned earlier as well. And we invite you all to join us, come hang out. Let's finish this family reunion and just get to meet each other, see old friends, and make new ones. And with that, I will say thank you very much.